Chapter 1871. I'll do it. Tang Jing smiled mysteriously as he stepped forward. Bai Luo's eyes shone with excitement. They didn't have absolute confidence in winning, but with Tang Jing taking action, it would be a piece of cake. Sun Dazhuang raised his eyes. There was a large difference in height between him and Tang Jing, but his aura was not weak at all. He sized up Tang Jing from head to toe and said, "Who are you?" "I, Sun Dazhuang, will not exchange blows with a nameless person." Tang Jing smiled, "You can ask me after you win." Sun Dazhuang was enraged. "In this Hongjun mountain range, other than me, Sun Dazhuang, you're the first one who dares to be so arrogant. Fine, I'll make an exception and beat you until you're looking for your teeth on the ground. Then I'll make you worship me as your master." As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Dazhuang's fist flew over, the sound of wind and thunder faintly echoing in the air. That fist grew larger and larger until it was the size of a boulder in front of Tang Jing. Boom! The sound of wind and thunder filled the air. "Fall for me!" Sun Dazhuang roared, but his fist suddenly stopped, unable to move forward, as if it was blocked by an irresistible force. Sun Dazhuang staggered and almost fell to the ground. The others saw all of this and clearly saw Tang Jing calmly extend his right hand and lightly press down on that boulder-like fist. The fist's attack came to an abrupt stop. Bai Luo and the others excitedly clenched their fists, looking at Tang Jing with eyes full of worship. Sun Dazhuang made a sound of surprise. "You have some skill, but it's not enough." As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Dazhuang disappeared and drilled back into the ground. Tang Jing lowered his head and swept his gaze over, but he couldn't find any clues. The other Earth travelers revealed excited expressions and whispered, "Dazhuang is going to use his ultimate move. That's right, this person definitely won't be able to receive it. That's a must." Bai Luo and the others' expressions stiffened, their hearts in turmoil as they began to worry. Tang Jing was calm and collected, but he was a bit curious as to what kind of ultimate move this Sun Dazhuang could use. After coming to the divine realm, he hadn't seen many people and hadn't seen many divine abilities. He was looking forward to meeting the Earth Traveler tribe. It was his first time meeting a tribe that lived underground. Suddenly, Tang Jing sensed something and lowered his head to look. A hand appeared at his feet, fiercely grabbing Tang Jing's ankle and fiercely pulling him down. Half of Tang Jing's body was dragged into the hard frozen ground, leaving only half of his body exposed. The Earth Traveler's excitement grew. He widened his eyes as if he was waiting for a good show. Of course, Tang Jing could have broken free, but he didn't do so. Instead, he quietly waited for the coming ultimate move. "Ha ha ha, you dare to challenge me, Sun Dazhuang? I'll beat you until your mother can't recognize you." Sun Dazhuang's wild laughter came from underground. Boom! Boom! The frozen earth on the ground moved and turned into a giant hammer. The frozen earth was suffused with cold light as it whistled down. Bang! It smashed heavily onto Tang Jing's head. With a loud explosion, the giant hammer was torn to pieces. Sun Dazhuang's cry of surprise came from underground. Tang Jing actually broke his attack again. This was beyond his expectations. However, in the next second, rumbling sounds came from underground. The ground around Tang Jing rose high, as if waves had appeared on the ground. They surged violently and swept towards Tang Jing. The frozen earth that was as hard as a boulder could actually move and turn into waves. This made Tang Jing's eyes light up. The Earth Traveler tribe's divine ability is extraordinary. At the very least, this earth control technique isn't something an ordinary person can achieve. The frozen earth waves swept over. Tang Jing was like a small boat that could be smashed apart at any time. Sun Dazhuang appeared again. He stood on top of the waves and looked down at Tang Jing. He laughed wildly. "Can you take this ultimate move of mine?" Suddenly, Tang Jing smiled at Sun Dazhuang, causing Sun Dazhuang's heart to shiver as he had a bad premonition. "Don't scare yourself. He's just deliberately mystifying me. How can I be scared by a smile?" Sun Dazhuang patted his chest and hurriedly comforted himself. All of a sudden, Sun Dazhuang saw Tang Jing extend his hands and gently press down on the surging waves. The waves in front of him instantly calmed down as if they had turned into a tranquil lake. The ground returned to normal. Immediately afterward, more and more waves calmed down. In an instant, all of the waves disappeared without a trace. The ground returned to normal. Meanwhile, Sun Dazhuang fell down from the waves and stood on the ground. He was only a few meters away from Tang Zheng. He stared blankly at Tang Zheng and shouted in disbelief, "Impossible. Do you also know earth movement technique?" Tang Zheng's heart stirred. This earth movement technique was definitely the Earth Traveler tribe's earth control technique. Take a guess. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. Although the two had only exchanged a few moves, Sun Dazhuang already had a premonition that he wasn't this person's match. With a flash of inspiration, he immediately drilled into the ground. Bang! However, his head slammed heavily into the ground. The ground was as hard as iron, and a large bump appeared on his head. What's going on? Sun Dazhuang was shocked. The earth was as soft as water to the Earth Traveler tribe. As long as they wanted to, they could swim freely in the soil. However, at this moment, the earth beneath his feet was as hard as iron. He couldn't drill down at all. The Earth Traveler tribe's divine ability was also ineffective. Sun Dazhuang looked at Tang Zheng in horror and asked, "What did you do?" Tang Zheng lightly moved and got up from the ground. He stood on the ground and approached Sun Dazhuang step by step, saying, "It's just a small trick. You guys are good at controlling the earth. As long as you can break through this point, then your divine ability is nothing to fear." Sun Dazhuang was terrified. He had never heard anyone say that they could break through the earth movement technique so easily. "How did you do it?" Sun Dazhuang asked, his hair standing on end. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and didn't answer. The other Earth Travelers finally came to their senses. Seeing that their companion was in danger, they all rushed over and roared, "Dazhuang, we'll help you." Sun Dazhuang stomped his foot and said, "Back down. I, Sun Dazhuang, will take responsibility for my own actions. I've lost, so why should I need you guys to regain my face? Kill me if you want." After saying that, he raised his neck, showing a fearless posture of waiting to be killed. "You've got some guts," Tang Zheng praised. "Of course, I'm the #1 warrior of the Earth Traveler tribe. How could I let the Earth Traveler's prestige fall?" Sun Dazhuang said proudly. However, his heroic appearance didn't last long. He said with a sullen expression, "It's a pity that I, Sun Dazhuang, am going to die like this before I get married." He looked at Bai Luo with reluctance. Bai Luo couldn't bear to see him like this and said, "Tang Zheng, can you not kill him? He doesn't seem that bad." "Of course I'm not bad. I'm a warrior of the Earth Traveler tribe. I'm a good person." Sun Dazhuang hurriedly expressed his stance. "You care so much about me. As expected, you're someone I, Sun Dazhuang, like." Bai Luo's face turned red and she said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense." "Haha." Tang Zheng laughed loudly. "Sun Dazhuang, I can spare you if you answer Bai Luo's question honestly." Chapter 1872. Sun Dazhuang said shamelessly, "Ask away. There's nothing in the Hongjun mountain range that I, Sun Dazhuang, don't know." Bai Luo curled her lips. "Can you stop bragging?" Sun Dazhuang's face turned red as he defended himself. "I'm telling the truth. How am I bragging?" Bai Luo waved her hand. "All right, I'll believe you for now. There's a very powerful person in the Hongjun mountain range, right? He's very powerful, very powerful." With that, she lowered her voice and whispered, "He's a god race, but he's different from other god races." "God race?" Sun Dazhuang's expression froze. His eyelids twitched as he blurted out, "How did you know?" Bai Luo looked as if she had expected it. "I was the one who asked you first. Answer my question first." Sun Dazhuang stuttered as he could not help but look at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked at him with a smile, but no matter how he looked at it, he felt that this smile did not have good intentions. He shuddered inwardly. "Sun Dazhuang, didn't you boast that you know everything in the Hongjun mountain range?" Sun Dazhuang's face turned red as he raised his neck and said, "Of course I know. Isn't it that person? He is indeed in the Hongjun mountain range." Bai Luo's eyes lit up as she hurriedly asked, "Then where is he?" Sun Dazhuang pointed at the tallest mountain in the distance and said, "On that mountain." Speaking of this person, his temper is really bad. Our Earth Traveler race went to visit him, but he refused to meet us. Who does he think he is? If it wasn't for Father stopping me, I would have challenged him and let him know the power of the Earth Traveler race. Bai Luo stuck out her tongue and made a funny face. She said, "You're bragging. He's so powerful, how could you be his match? You can't even beat Tang Zheng." In other words, Tang Zheng was much worse than that person. Bai Luo only realized the problem after she finished speaking. She looked at Tang Zheng in embarrassment and said, "Sorry, that's not what I meant." Tang Zheng laughed and shook his head. "It's fine." Sun Dazhuang said indignantly, "What you said is the truth. What's there to apologize for? How can he be stronger than that person? Even my father said that he was very powerful." Bai Luo glared fiercely at Sun Dazhuang and pouted, "Shut your mouth. No one thinks you're mute." Sun Dazhuang shrunk his neck and muttered, "You can't even tell me the truth. That's too much of a bully." Bai Luoquan pretended not to hear and continued to ask, "The mountain peak is so high, where exactly is that person? Moreover, I heard that he is not alone. Who else is with him?" Sun Dazhuang chuckled. "You've asked the right person again. Although I haven't seen him before, I have the right to speak on this issue. He's at the peak of the main peak. That's not an ordinary place. Ordinary people can't climb up at all. If you go, you'll all turn into popsicles. Only our Earth Traveler race can go up there. Of course, true experts can also go up, like that person." When everyone heard this, they were secretly speechless. Indeed, he's not alone. He's with dozens of experts. I wonder where he found them. Not only are there Mahayana realm experts, but there's also Saint realm experts. That's the highest level below the god race. Sun Dazhuang's eyes lit up with anticipation. "One day, I'll also cultivate to the Saint realm." "You only want to cultivate to the Saint realm?" Tang Zheng asked. Sun Dazhuang rolled his eyes. "What do you mean only want to? That's the highest level below the god race. It's the limit of what humans can reach. It's a realm that countless people dream of. Don't you want to cultivate to the god realm?" Tang Zheng asked. "Become a god?" Sun Dazhuang's eyes widened as he stared at Tang Zheng as if he was looking at a monster. "She keeps saying that I'm bragging. You're the real braggart. You want to cultivate to the god realm? Admirable, admirable. Ha ha ha." The other Earth Traveler race members all laughed, thinking that Tang Zheng was overestimating himself. It was a fantasy. Bai Luo and the others had strange expressions, seemingly agreeing with Sun Dazhuang's words. Tang Zheng shook his head inwardly. It seemed that the people of the god realm had a deep-rooted belief that it was impossible for them to become a god. Bai Luo stomped her foot angrily. "You're not allowed to laugh. Sun Dazhuang, aren't you very familiar with the Hongjun mountain range? Then take us to the main peak." If anyone else had made this request, I definitely wouldn't have agreed. But since you're the one who asked, hey, then I won't refuse. Sun Dazhuang patted his chest and said, "I'm the only one who can take you to the main peak. It's a good opportunity to meet that person. My father always told me not to go, but I refused to listen. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Sun Dazhuang, Bai Luo, and the others hit it off and immediately flew toward the main peak. The cold wind was like a knife, cutting people's cheeks painfully, almost turning them into popsicles. They were all cultivators, but some of them were still shivering from the cold. The Earth Traveler race members didn't feel any discomfort. It was clear that they had long since adapted to this harsh weather. "I'll protect you. Otherwise, you'll all freeze to death before we even reach the top." Sun Dazhuang took out an earthen yellow bead and said, "This is the Earth Elemental bead, it can block the wind and snow." An earthen yellow light burst forth from the bead and immediately enveloped Bai Luo, turning into a ball of light that blocked the wind and snow outside. Sun Dazhuang also hid inside the ball of light and tried to curry favor. "I'll protect you." However, a figure flashed and Bai Luo pulled Tang Zheng into the ball of light. "Tang Zheng, you come in too." Sun Dazhuang rolled his eyes and glared at Tang Zheng. He said resentfully, My other brothers can protect him. Just let them protect the others. Aren't you very powerful? Then let's protect one more person. You can't do it, right? Bai Luo asked deliberately. She was gradually getting a better understanding of Sun Dazhuang's nature. As expected, Sun Dazhuang's eyes widened and he patted his chest. Why can't I do it? I can definitely do it. Tang Zheng nodded. Men can't say they can't. Sun Dazhuang's eyes lit up and he praised, right, men can't say they can't walk. This saying is too well said. The other Earth travelers also took out their Earth elemental beads to protect the others and block the wind and snow. The main peak looked close, but it was actually quite a distance away. After a long time, they finally reached the foot of the main peak. The wind and snow on the mountain were too strong, and even the Earth elemental beads were unable to block the terrifying wind and snow. As such, they could only land at the foot of the mountain and climb it on foot. Only then could they avoid being blown down from the sky and smashed into meat paste. Sun Dazhuang took the lead and rushed to the front. Behind him were Bai Luo and Tang Zheng, while the others were a step behind. Sun Dazhuang deliberately increased his pace in order to shake off Tang Zheng and have a chance to be alone with Bai Luo. Unfortunately, no matter how fast he walked, he couldn't shake off Tang Zheng. In the end, it was Bai Luo who couldn't keep up with the two of them. Sun Dazhuang was protective of the fairer sex and had no choice but to stop. Tang Zheng took in all of his little tricks, and a smile appeared in the corner of his eyes, but he did not expose him. Boom boom boom. Chapter 1873. The loud sound caused Sun Dazhuang's expression to change as he shouted, "Great avalanche!" Bai Luo and the others had puzzled expressions. They were all Xiuzhi. How could they be afraid of an avalanche? Only Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes slightly as he detected something. This definitely wasn't a normal avalanche. Sun Dazhuang stomped his foot and said angrily, "Retreat." However, the loud sound was already above their heads. They couldn't retreat at all. Boom boom boom. They finally saw the scene of the avalanche. It was white snow that covered the sky. It surged and fell from the sky as though it had the power to destroy the world. But this wasn't the most terrifying part. Bolts of lightning flashed in the white snow, crackling endlessly. Everywhere the lightning passed, everything was torn to pieces. They finally understood what Sun Dazhuang and the others were feeling. They screamed at the top of their lungs, "Run!" Sun Dazhuang grimaced and shook his head. "It's too late, we can only take the risk and try. Everyone gather the Earth elemental beads and hope they can hold on for a while." The people of the Earth Traveler race immediately gathered together, and a few Earth elemental pearls rose up slowly. Streaks of earth and yellow light gathered together and transformed into a huge ball of light, protecting everyone. Boom! The white snow and lightning hit the ball of light at almost the same time. Without any effort, the ball of light crumbled into pieces that scattered with the wind. Not good. Their expressions froze as they widened their eyes in despair. If even the Earth elemental beads couldn't stop it, then their bodies were even less of a match. To think that I, Sun Dazhuang, will die on this mountain before I get married and have children. It's really a loss. Sun Dazhuang shouted tragically, "Bai Luo, I didn't marry you in this life, but I will definitely marry you in the next life." Bai Luo had been panicking, but when she heard Sun Dazhuang's words, her face turned red and she was very shy. Then her heart darkened. Sun Dazhuang wouldn't have come here originally. All of this was because of her, so she really owed him. At the last moment, she gathered her courage and gritted her teeth. She responded in an almost inaudible voice, "If there really is a next life, I will marry you." Sun Dazhuang heard this and was overjoyed. He laughed loudly and heroically. "Ha ha ha, with your words, I will die a worthy death. See you in the next life." The others also felt the same way as they looked at the rolling avalanche in despair. The avalanche was already right in front of them. Some people subconsciously closed their eyes and tensed up. They were dumbstruck and lost their ability to move. Suddenly, a person stepped out from the crowd and walked forward. "Tang Zheng!" Bai Luo cried out involuntarily, "What are you doing?" Tang Zheng turned around and smiled, not saying a word. "He wants to block the avalanche." Sun Dazhuang saw through Tang Jing's thoughts and shouted in disbelief. How is that possible? This is like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It's impossible. The others nodded in agreement with Sun Dazhuang's words. Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to him and stomped his foot heavily. The earth shook as if there was a burst of energy gushing out from the ground like a volcanic eruption. The great avalanche happened to be right in front of him, but it was unable to move forward. Instead, it split into two and rolled down the mountain around him. It was as if there was a powerful energy in his body that blocked the avalanche. Even the avalanche could not do anything to him. Pa, pa, pa. A bolt of snow-white lightning flew toward Tang Zheng in an attempt to devour him. However, just as the lightning was about to strike Tang Zheng, it abruptly stopped and disappeared into thin air. The others were petrified as they watched this scene in disbelief. Many pairs of eyes fell on Tang Zheng's body. No matter how they scratched their heads, they could not figure out how he had done it. A formless energy protected everyone as the avalanche rolled down the mountain around them without them being injured in the slightest. Only the deafening rumbling sound remained between heaven and earth, causing their minds to go blank. Time passed by and the rumbling sound gradually disappeared. However, they still hadn't come to their senses. They stared dumbstruck at Tang Zheng as if they didn't know him at all. Tang Zheng turned around and saw everyone's shocked expressions. He smiled faintly and said, "Let's continue climbing." Whoosh! Sun Dazhuang rushed in front of Tang Zheng like a gust of wind. He looked him up and down as if he wanted to see through him. He asked in a nervous and curious voice, "How did you do it?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning." Sun Dazhuang's face reddened. If that was a small trick, then what was his? Do you have some kind of powerful magic treasure? Sun Dazhuang racked his brains and thought that he had found a reasonable explanation. Tang Zheng nodded. Yes. His hidden profound sword was a holy weapon, so of course it was a powerful magic treasure. However, it had nothing to do with him blocking the avalanche. When Sun Dazhuang heard this, he immediately came to a realization and muttered to himself, "I knew it. You must have some kind of powerful magic treasure to be able to block the avalanche." He did not try to get to the bottom of it. After all, magic treasures were too important to cultivators and would not be easily shown to others. Bai Luo immediately came to Tang Zheng's rescue. She said, "Sun Dazhuang, do you know the difference between you and Tang Zheng now? You didn't lose unjustly at all." Sun Dazhuang pouted angrily, feeling indignant. Suddenly, he had an idea. He said, "We didn't die, so you can marry me now, right? That's what you promised me." Bai Luo remembered the promise she had made in the face of danger and her face turned red. She said, "I was talking about the next life, not this life. Ari, the next life can be brought forward to this life." Sun Dazhuang said shamelessly. How could Bai Luo continue to argue with him? Seeing that Tang Zheng had already started to climb the mountain, she chased after him, saying, "Let's climb the mountain first." Sun Dazhuang resentfully curled his lips. He said, "Then let's climb the mountain." Humph, a good woman is afraid of a pestering man. I don't believe that you won't agree. The group continued to climb the mountain and did not encounter any more danger. However, the air became colder and colder. Many people's teeth chattered, unable to withstand the cold. Tang Zheng glanced at them and waved his hand. A ray of light fell down and protected them. Immediately, it was as warm as spring. Everyone raised their heads in shock and stared at Tang Zheng. He was still as calm as ever. Everyone's hearts trembled as they realized that Tang Zheng was far more powerful and unfathomable than they had thought. Sun Dazhuang also fell silent. What little confidence he had left completely collapsed as he realized that he was not Tang Zheng's opponent. Previously, it was not wrong for him to lose to Tang Zheng. "We're here." Suddenly, Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks and gazed at the main peak. The others all looked over and sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. A city. To be more precise, it was a bustling city under construction. Sun Dazhuang said in shock, "How could someone build a city here?" One had to know that the environment here was harsh and not suitable for human survival. Building a city was a thankless task, and it was also extremely difficult. Bai Luo's eyes lit up. Could it be that person who built it? Is it him? Sun Dazhuang gulped in disbelief. No wonder his father was so respectful of someone who could build a city here. Chapter 1874. The main peak had already been razed to the ground, and a group of people were busy building a city. Tang Zheng and the others looked over, as if they wanted to see their target in the crowd. Suddenly, Bai Luo pointed at a person and said, "Carefree master, it's really him." The others cried out in confirmation. Tang Zheng frowned. He had never heard of this name before. Who was this person? He still couldn't find his Yuanian clone in the crowd. Daoist Mo. Bai Luo pointed at another person and cried out in alarm. Immediately, cries of surprise rang out as they called out one name after another. Tang Zheng didn't hear a single name, but the others were shocked. It was obvious that these people's identities weren't ordinary. Tang Zheng asked in astonishment, "You know them? Who are they?" Bai Luo and the others looked at Tang Zheng as if they were looking at a monster. Sun Dazhuang couldn't help but ask, "Have you never heard of their names?" Tang Zheng smiled faintly, tacitly agreeing. "Where did you come from? You don't even know these famous people?" Sun Dazhuang said in disbelief. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly, "Forgive me for being ignorant, but I really don't know." Sun Dazhuang sized up Tang Zheng as if he was looking at a monster. He said, "You're amazing. These people aren't ordinary people. They've been famous in the God realm for a long time." "Oh, then why are they here?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. The others looked at each other. Sun Dazhuang curled his lips and said, "I also want to know." Bai Luo said thoughtfully, "Could it be that they've all submitted to that mysterious expert?" Sun Dazhuang rubbed his chin and pondered for a while before saying, "We can't rule out that possibility." Tang Zheng walked towards the city with large strides and said with a smile, "We'll know if we ask." When he got close to the city and saw all these experts, his pupils shrank. These people all had a mysterious seal on them that was forcefully restricting their life. As long as someone willed it, these seals would activate and they would immediately die. Tang Zheng was shocked and muttered to himself, "What a powerful brand. It seems that they were not willing. Who are you all?" When they approached, the other party immediately berated them aggressively. Bai Luo and the others paled in fright, not knowing what to do. Tang Zheng stood tall and said calmly, "I'm here to look for your leader." Bai Luo and the others looked at Tang Zheng with complicated gazes. This group of people's auras were too powerful. Just a few shouts were enough to make their heartstrings tremble, but Tang Zheng didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. It was truly strange. "Find him?" The other party's expression changed greatly. "What qualifications do you have to find him?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You don't need to be qualified to find him." "Arrogant. Do you think we're just decorations? Is he someone you can meet just because you say so?" The group of people's tone was unkind, and they were not prepared to let them pass. Tang Zheng shook his head and sighed, "How arrogant." He strolled towards the other party. Bai Luo and the others turned pale with fright and screamed, "Stop, don't go up." It was clear that the path ahead was too dangerous. The other party wouldn't let them pass willingly. They were all famous experts in the divine realm, and there was more than one of them. How could Tang Zheng pass through their human wall? Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to them and leisurely walked forward. Under everyone's gazes, he met the group of people in front of him. Boom! An earth-shattering power soared into the sky, surging towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stood in the middle of it, as if he had walked into a raging sea. He was like a stabilizing needle, walking forward without being affected in the slightest. This scene caused many people's jaws to drop. How did Tang Zheng do it? Question marks appeared in everyone's minds. "Watch me." Another person also used a divine ability. A gale swept up snowflakes, turning them into a snow dragon that roared as it rushed forward. Bang! The snow dragon exploded, turning into snowflakes that fell from the sky, not harming Tang Zheng at all. "Me too. Me too." The others shouted and attacked at the same time. Immediately, earth-shattering sounds rose and fell one after another as countless attacks rained down on Tang Zheng like a torrential storm. Tang Zheng's footsteps did not stop, walking past these attacks. Then, one figure after another cried out in alarm as they were sent flying. Soon, the world quieted down. Everyone's jaws dropped as they watched this scene in disbelief. Tang Zheng walked into the city, completely ignoring the experts who had been defeated by him, as if this was a matter of course and not worth being surprised. Suddenly, he stopped and turned to Bai Luo and the others, saying, "Let's go." The several people seemed to have awoken from a dream as they dragged their heavy steps to Tang Zheng's side. Pairs of eyes stared at him. Sun Dazhuang swallowed his saliva and asked, "How did you do it?" Tang Zheng smiled, "Didn't you all see it?" What did they see? They didn't see Tang Zheng make a move at all, but the group of people's attacks were quickly disintegrated and they were sent flying. This overturned their understanding. One had to know that there were Saint Realm experts in this group. They were the strongest existences below the god race. How could they be defeated so miserably? Bai Luo looked at Tang Zheng in a daze and smacked her lips, exclaiming, "I didn't know you were so powerful." Tang Zheng smiled, saying, "I've made a fool of myself." No one laughed. Their faces seemed to be petrified, their expressions frozen. "Who are you?" Suddenly, one of the people who had been defeated by Tang Zheng shouted. Tang Zheng smiled but did not say anything. He did not reveal his identity and walked straight into the depths of the city. This city was very big, but it was empty. Other than those experts, there was no one else. Why is this place so deserted? Bai Luo gradually came back to her senses and looked around, muttering curiously. Tang Zheng's eyes were like lightning as they locked onto the city lord's residence in the center of the city. This city was similar to the other cities he had seen in the god realm. Countless buildings in picturesque disorder surrounded the city lord's residence, and the most important person in this city lived in the city lord's residence. Yuanying's clone, I'm finally going to meet you. Tang Zheng thought silently, full of anticipation. But he was also a little puzzled. After the group of experts saw him, they did not treat him as Yuanying's clone. This did not seem to make sense. After all, when that god race expert went to the mortal realm and saw Tang Zheng, he treated him as Yuanying's clone. In other words, Yuanying's clone appeared in Tang Zheng's appearance. Then, these experts couldn't have seen Tang Zheng's true appearance and still be indifferent. So, there must be a secret behind this. Let's go to the city lord's residence. Tang Zheng went straight to his destination. The others looked at each other anxiously, but they could not voice their opinions. They could only follow his footsteps and arrive at the city lord's residence. Creak. When they arrived at the city lord's residence, the door opened with a creak, as if the person inside had been waiting for them for a long time. Tang Zheng's expression was normal, but the others' expressions changed greatly. Tang Zheng had caused such a big commotion. How would that mysterious expert deal with him? Chapter 1875. This was an unfamiliar face. He stood behind the gates of the city lord's manor, looking at the newcomers with a smile that wasn't a smile. Tang Zheng and the others also stared at him. This person's aura was very subtle. He was standing right in front of them, but he seemed to be far away. If they closed their eyes, Sun Dazhuang and the others wouldn't be able to sense his existence at all. He was like a wisp of air. Without a doubt, this person was an expert. As for whether or not he was the legendary mysterious expert, they couldn't be sure. Why do I feel the urge to kowtow to him when I stand in front of him? Bai Luo asked guiltily. The others felt the same and nodded in agreement. Sun Dazhuang also nodded resentfully. Be careful. We came here directly to cause trouble, so he definitely won't have a good attitude. Several people felt bitter in their hearts as they looked at Tang Zheng. He was the one who had attacked, so they didn't know what he would do when faced with this person. Unexpectedly, Tang Zheng's expression was calm as he said, "We finally meet." "Yes, you're finally here," the other person replied lightly, as if he wasn't surprised by Tang Zheng's words. The others looked left and right, dumbfounded. What was going on? Tang Zheng knew very well that the person in front of him was an unfamiliar face, but it was definitely his Yuanying clone. Yuanying had come from him, so he naturally wouldn't be mistaken. Even if he changed his appearance, he would still be able to recognize him. Tang Jing suddenly understood. No wonder the experts outside didn't recognize him. It turned out that Yuanying's clone had a different appearance. Back then, he had only just arrived in the God realm, so he appeared with Tang Jing's appearance. Later on, for some reason, he changed this. I'm very surprised to see you. You came much earlier than I expected, Yuanying's clone said. He had used the power of the heavenly Tao to become a god. Tang Jing didn't have the power of the heavenly Tao to borrow, so Yuanying's clone couldn't figure out how he had become a god. Thus, he was filled with curiosity, which was why he showed himself. Tang Zheng understood the subtext of his words and said, "You have your chance, and I have mine. However, what you did was beyond my expectations." Yuanying's doppelganger laughed and pointed at the city outside, saying, "Didn't I tell you that I wanted to come take a look and show them my power? I'm doing that. You're amazing, but you almost got me into trouble." Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. Yuanying's doppelganger's heart trembled, and he let out a long sigh. "Sigh, I also thought of this later, which is why I became like this. I didn't expect that I would still bring you trouble." Changing the topic, Yuanying's doppelganger's gaze landed on Sun Dazhuang and the others. He smiled and said, "You're not bad yourself. You actually walked together with the earthen traveler." Hearing this, Sun Dazhuang immediately straightened his back. However, in front of Yuanying's doppelganger, he was still too short, and his imposing manner was completely lacking. The earthen traveler is not bad, but compared to the talents I've gathered, they're too lacking. Yuanying's doppelganger's next words immediately dealt a heavy blow to Sun Dazhuang. He raised his head in defiance and said, "What did you say? This is the truth. Even if the earthen traveler's chief, your father, were here, I would say the same thing. He wouldn't be able to refute me." Yuanying's doppelganger played down Sun Dazhuang's identity. Whether it was Tang Jing, Bai Luo, or the others, they were all shocked. Sun Dazhuang's background was so great. He was actually the son of the earthen traveler's chief. Sun Dazhuang glared. "You can insult me, but you're not allowed to insult the earthen traveler. If you speak rudely again, believe it or not, I'll beat you up." Sun Dazhuang puffed up his cheeks in an aggressive manner, seemingly unafraid of Yuanying's doppelganger. His clansmen had long since been scared out of their wits. They hurriedly pulled Sun Dazhuang back and said, "Calm down, calm down." Everyone knew that Sun Dazhuang was no match for him. Moreover, this person wasn't lying. After all, those people outside were all elites who had been famous for a long time, and had all been recruited by him. Compared to them, the Earth Traveler tribe indeed paled in comparison. Tang Zheng patted Sun Dazhuang's shoulder, indicating for him to calm down. Sun Dazhuang glanced at Tang Zheng and resentfully withdrew his aura. He also knew that he wasn't a match, but he couldn't control his temper. On the other hand, Bai Luo's eyes lit up as she looked deeply at Sun Dazhuang. "Since you and I have met, why don't we find a place to talk?" Tang Zheng suggested. However, Yuanying's doppelganger shook his head and refused. "I know what you're thinking. Although we have a deep relationship, I'll take responsibility for what I do. It's useless for you to persuade me. Moreover, with your temperament, since you've come this far, there's no turning back. You'll do the same thing as me." Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and unknowingly fell into deep thought. Yuanying's doppelganger truly understood him. He was doing what Yuanying's doppelganger was doing, fighting against the god race. It was just that the two of them had chosen different paths and methods. Yuanying's doppelganger saw that Tang Zheng was silent and knew that he understood his words. His competitive spirit rose and he said, "Actually, I know that you're quite dissatisfied with what I've done. Let me tell you, I'm also dissatisfied with what you've done. Since we can't see eye to eye, why don't we make an agreement?" "What agreement?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. "We'll use our own methods and see whose method works in the end. Whoever obtains the final victory will be considered to have defeated the other party and the other party will unconditionally submit. From then on, there will be no disloyalty." Yuanying's doppelganger's eyes flashed with anticipation and madness. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He and Yuanying's doppelganger were ultimately one body, and perhaps they would become one again in the future. But who would be in charge? After all, both of them had already cultivated to godhood, and neither of them would submit to the other. Both of them wanted to be in charge. Now that Yuanying's doppelganger had proposed this agreement, it was a competition. Whoever won would be in charge and the other party would submit. You don't dare! Yuanying's doppelganger goaded him. This was his only way to replace him. Moreover, he had already done a lot of preparatory work. He was confident that he would win. Although Bai Luo and the others didn't understand the specific meaning of the agreement, they understood that this person was unfathomable. There was absolutely no hope of winning if they competed with him. In their eyes, this was the truth. Thus, Bai Luo hurriedly advised, Tang Zheng, think twice before you act. Although Sun Dazhuang dared to talk back to Yuanying's doppelganger, he wasn't stupid. He earnestly advised, Bai Luo is right. There's no need to compete with him. Many pairs of eyes stared at Tang Zheng, all hinting at him not to do anything stupid. Tang Zheng smiled and said, I appreciate your good intentions, but I have no choice but to compete this time. All right, I'll agree with you. Let's see who wins in the end. Yuanying's doppelganger's eyes lit up and he laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, good. I know you're a man of your word. Then let's wait and see the results. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to it. Tang Zheng originally wanted to share the matter of the power of faith with Yuanying's doppelganger, but since they were competing, there was no need for that. Moreover, Yuanying's doppelganger had his own beliefs and choices. Even if he said it, the other party might not believe him. Then forgive me for not seeing you off, Yuanying's doppelganger said. I still have many things to do. Tang Zheng nodded and turned to leave. Sun Dazhuang hurriedly chased after him, but then stopped. He looked at Bai Luo standing in place, feeling troubled. Chapter 1876. Bai Luo stood in place, stuck between a rock and a hard place. She had originally come for Yuanying's clone, but now that Tang Zheng and Yuanying's clone were on bad terms, she didn't know what to do. Sun Dazhuang's attention was on Bai Luo. Seeing her troubled expression, he asked, Bai Luo, aren't you going to leave? Bai Luo hesitated. I don't know. Tang Zheng also stopped and turned his head, just in time to meet Bai Luo's gaze. Panic flashed through Bai Luo's eyes. She didn't know what to do. Tang Zheng smiled. I'll recommend a few people to you. They all worship you, so they're here to join you. Yuanying's clone was taken aback for a moment, then laughed loudly. Haha, good. Don't worry, I'll definitely put you to good use here. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotions. This person's subordinates were all experts who had been famous for a long time. Just the thought of being able to fight alongside them made their blood boil. Thus, apart from Bai Luo, everyone else nodded excitedly. Yuanying's clone smiled in satisfaction. These people's strength was mediocre and couldn't enter his eyes, but he still agreed. That was because Tang Zheng's words were effective. These people were with Tang Zheng, but they were here to join him. Didn't this mean that Yuanying's clone was superior to Tang Zheng? Thus, he naturally agreed happily. Tang Zheng obviously knew what Yuanying's clone was thinking, but he didn't mind. He smiled and turned to leave. Wait! Bai Luo suddenly called out. Tang Zheng stopped in surprise, and Yuanying's clone was no exception. He frowned slightly. Wasn't she here to join me? Why did she call out to Tang Zheng? Tang Zheng looked at Bai Luo in confusion. Is there something else? Can I go with you? Bai Luo hesitated, as if she had to muster up a lot of courage to ask. Tang Zheng was stunned. He wasn't the only one. Everyone else also looked at Bai Luo in shock. Yuanying's doppelganger frowned. How could he not understand what was going on? This person, who had originally sought refuge with him, had chosen Tang Zheng in the end. Wasn't this a blatant slap to his face? The joy in his heart vanished without a trace. Bai Luo's companions found this inconceivable and hurriedly advised, Bai Luo, what are you saying? Don't talk nonsense at this time. That's right. Isn't this what you've been dreaming of? Now that your dream has come true, stop fooling around. They were worried that Yuan Ying's doppelganger would blame her. Bai Luo was a reasonable person and knew that they were doing this for her own good. But she couldn't get over the hurdle in her heart, so she said resentfully, "I'm sorry, I want to go with Tang Zheng now. Maybe my previous thoughts were too simple and one-sided." Bai Luo didn't know why she suddenly changed her mind. But these were her truest thoughts, and she had only spoken the truth. She was a very simple person. If she had something on her mind, she would say it directly. Her companions were dumbfounded and didn't know how to persuade her. They said disappointedly, "You'll regret this." In their hearts, although Tang Zheng had shown some outstanding qualities, how could he be compared to Yuan Ying's doppelganger? Thus, Bai Luo's decision was naturally wrong. Tang Zheng hadn't expected this either, but since Bai Luo had made her decision, he wouldn't refuse her. "Okay, then come with me." Tang Zheng glanced at Yuan Ying's doppelganger. The other party's expression was unfriendly, so Tang Zheng ignored him and walked out. Bai Luo gathered her courage and quickly followed Tang Zheng's footsteps. Sun Dazhuang came back to his senses and looked at Bai Luo's back. His eyes lit up as he praised, "As expected of the woman I like. So domineering and flavorful." After saying this, he snuck a glance at Yuan Ying's doppelganger and discovered that he was like a volcano about to erupt. He hurriedly fled and chased after Bai Luo with his companions. The group walked out of the city and walked down the mountain under the gazes of the experts. Bai Luo chattered non-stop with Bai Luo. Bai Luo's cheeks were red from his praise, and she didn't know how to respond. She glanced at Tang Zheng's back and hastened her footsteps. She walked side by side with him and asked nervously, "What should I do next?" Tang Zheng smiled. "We'll see. There's bound to be something for you to do." Bai Luo made a no sound and said, "Did we offend that person?" Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment before saying, "To be more precise, they're competitors with him. Do you still remember the agreement I made with him?" Bai Luo nodded blankly. She didn't know what this had to do with anything. Sun Dazhuang looked suspiciously at Tang Zheng and asked, "What agreement did you make with him?" The two were acting so mysteriously. The others were all confused and didn't know the contents of the agreement. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and kept them in suspense. He said mischievously, "If you want to know, then take me to see your father." Sun Dazhuang was clearly startled. His brain couldn't wrap itself around this and asked blankly, "Why are you looking for him?" "I want to have a heart-to-heart talk with him." Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. Sun Dazhuang looked suspiciously at him. What's there to have a heart-to-heart talk with an old man like him? However, no matter how aggressively he looked at Tang Zheng, it was to no avail. Tang Zheng's mouth was too tight. Sun Dazhuang couldn't get any useful information out of him at all. He said helplessly, "All right, I'll take you to see him. I want to see what you two have to talk about." At the same time, Sun Dazhuang's interest in Tang Zheng increased greatly. He wanted to get to the bottom of this and figure out what he wanted to do. "Bai Luo, I'll take you to see the world of our Earth Traveler race. It'll definitely broaden your horizons." Sun Dazhuang changed the topic and locked onto Bai Luo with full force. Bai Luo said longingly, "Is that so? Then I'll definitely enjoy it." The group descended the main peak and didn't encounter any more danger. Under the guidance of the Earth Traveler race, the group arrived at a secluded place. The ground was covered in white snow. It was unknown how much it had covered. Sun Dazhuang shot a divine ability into the ground. Crack! As if something had activated, the ground trembled. A large door slowly opened on the ground, revealing a flight of stairs. The stairs were too long and extended to unknown ends. Sun Dazhuang and his companions took the lead and walked down the stairs step by step. "Let's go," Sun Dazhuang urged. Tang Zheng said to Bai Luo, "Let's go and see the Earth Traveler race. Not everyone has this kind of lucky opportunity." Bai Luo smiled with a complicated expression as she followed Tang Zheng's footsteps. One in front, one behind, they walked down the stairs. Creak! Behind them, the door closed. Their vision darkened, then lit up again. Bai Luo's eyes widened as she looked around. She saw gems embedded in the walls, emitting a gentle light and illuminating the path ahead. A moment later, they reached the end of the stairs and their vision opened up. Tang Jing didn't find this strange and only stared ahead. Bai Luo couldn't hide the shock on her face. She looked around and couldn't take her eyes off everything. This underground world was completely different from what they had imagined. This world was colorful, and there were gems embedded in the walls and ceiling. She really didn't know where they had found so many gems. Just how much wealth was this? Sun Dazhuang's group attracted countless gazes after they appeared. They all bowed to Sun Dazhuang, and Sun Dazhuang also returned their greetings. This was completely different from before. It was a different side of him. Bai Luo watched with great interest, and her eyes couldn't help but light up. Sun Dazhuang had always vowed that he would marry no one but her. She was originally disgusted. However, she gradually understood Sun Dazhuang and found that he was very loyal. She didn't hate him as much. Sun Dazhuang's image in her heart became more vivid. Tang Zheng and Bai Luo received countless gazes because it had been many years since an outsider had come here. Tang Zheng welcomed everyone's gazes. His eyes were like the sun in spring, making people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. It was as if they could temporarily forget the world of ice and snow outside. Chapter 1877. A group of people walked over and Sun Dazhuang hurriedly went up to greet them, shouting, "Father, look who I've brought you." The leader of the group was an old man with a white beard, but his muscles were strong as if they were filled with explosive power. The wrinkles on his face also seemed to contain power. In short, this old man didn't look old at all. He was the chief of the Earth Traveler race, Sun Dazhuang's father, Sun Jiugong. He looked up and sized up Tang Zheng and Bai Luo. His gaze swept past Bai Luo and settled on Tang Zheng, a strange look flashing through his eyes. He couldn't see through Tang Zheng. He already knew that he was a saint, but he couldn't see through a person. It was clear how serious this was. This old man has poor eyesight and has been cooped up here for many years. I don't know the world and experts of the outside world. May I know who you two are? Sun Jiugong said after some consideration. Sun Dazhuang hurriedly introduced, "This is Tang Zheng, he's very powerful. This is Bai Luo, my." Bai Luo anxiously glared at him. Sun Dazhuang shrunk his neck and chuckled, whispering into his father's ear. Sun Jiugong's eyes flashed with surprise, and his gaze toward Bai Luo also changed. There seemed to be more kindness and friendliness. Bai Luo anxiously stomped her foot. Just what did Sun Dazhuang say? Sun Dazhuang chuckled, ignoring Bai Luo's threatening gaze. Sun Jiugong said loudly, "Honored guests have come from afar, so please stay here first. My son will show you the splendor of our underground world." Tang Zheng nodded, "Guests will follow the host's wishes. Then we'll follow Chief Sun's arrangements." He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither too fast nor too slow. His temperament was subduing, causing others to look at him in a new light. "Then come with me, I'll show you our world. This is the only place, there's no such thing outside," Sun Dazhuang said as if he was presenting a treasure. After the few of them left, everyone immediately started talking at once. "Chief, who are these two people? Why did you let them stay? No outsiders have ever come to our world. Isn't this too much of a joke?" Sun Jiugong said with a smile, "That's not right. Dazhuang has taken a fancy to that girl." "Huh!" Everyone was shocked and congratulated him one after another. "Congratulations, clan leader. Dazhuang has finally brought back a wife. The Earth Traveler tribe has a successor." Sun Jiugong stroked his beard. He had a son at an old age, but his son's marriage was still a worry for him. This time, he was filial and brought back a wife from outside. Sun Jiugong laughed out loud. "That girl can stay, but what about the other one? That's a man." "That's right. He's an outsider. We can't let him stay." Sun Jiugong's smile faded as he solemnly said, "Don't you see that this person's background is very big? How powerful can his background be? We, the Earth Traveler race, are content with our territory. Even if the God race comes, we won't lower ourselves. With such a ferocious person on the main peak, we won't provoke him. He didn't provoke us either, so what do we have to be afraid of? Sun Jiugong nodded and said earnestly, you are right, but I think this person is not ordinary, so I want to see what his purpose is. Everyone felt apprehensive and asked, could he be coveting our Earth Traveler race's treasures? Everyone knows that our Earth Traveler race has many treasures. Who knows how many people covet them? Sun Jiugong didn't comment and said, let's see first. Since Dazhuang met them, he must know a bit about them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought them back so rashly. The patriarch made the final decision. Even if everyone had objections, they could only swallow them back into their stomachs. Sun Dazhuang was forcibly called back by his father even though he always wanted to stay by Luo's side. Father, I'm with Luo right now. Why did you call me back? Sun Dazhuang asked in dissatisfaction. Sun Jiugong said seriously, I have business with you. It won't be too late for you to go to the romance later. Sun Dazhuang's eyes lit up as he preemptively asked, do you want to know about Tang Zheng's background? Haha, my son knows me best. Sun Dazhuang said with a matter-of-fact expression, no one knows a father better than a son. How could I not know? I've been waiting for you to ask. Stinking brat. Sun Jiugong comforted him and glared at him with a smile. Sun Dazhuang narrated every detail of his encounter with Tang Zheng in detail. He emphasized his encounter with the person on the main peak and didn't leave out a single detail. Sun Dazhuang analyzed, Tang Zheng's origins are too mysterious. He definitely isn't simple. Since he wanted to come to the Earth Traveler race, I brought him here. I have a feeling that he has a purpose for coming here. Perhaps it's not a bad thing for our Earth Traveler race. Father, you didn't see how he faced the person on the main peak. He wasn't afraid at all. Moreover, the two of them had an agreement. They seemed to be evenly matched competitors. Evenly matched. Sun Jiugong's eyelids twitched fiercely. That person is in the god race realm. Tang Zheng is evenly matched with him. This is too inconceivable. Yes, I think so too. Sun Dazhuang nodded heavily and said doubtfully, but I had this feeling at the time. He seemed to know that person very well and wasn't afraid of him at all. Only if he was strong enough would he not be afraid of that person. Sun Jiugong looked pensive. Dazhuang, your information is very important and your analysis is very reasonable. You finally know how to use your brain and not blindly act recklessly. Sun Dazhuang's face turned red as he argued, how can I only act recklessly? I've always known how to use my brain. No matter how strong this person is, he can't be underestimated. Since his come, I naturally can't keep dragging this out. I'll observe him for a few days and then probe his intentions. Tang Zheng and Bai Luo had been in the underground world for several days. Tang Zheng was quite happy and content as he admired the local customs and customs of the underground world. Because the Earth Traveler race was generally short, their architectural style and other unusual items were a size smaller. However, their items were all very exquisite. The Earth Traveler race was nimble and dexterous. Although they were all big and burly, and even the women were no exception, they were very clever. Many of the items they made were breathtaking. Of course, there was another point that made Tang Zheng's eyes light up. The Earth Traveler race had many treasures. Whether it was a normal person or a prominent person, their houses were decorated with many gems. After the initial novelty passed, Bai Luo became sullen. Sun Dazhuang stayed close to her almost every day, which made her very angry. However, she was not afraid of being beaten or scolded. He was like a dogskin plaster that she could not do anything about. Tang Zheng looked on with a smile. A good girl was afraid of being pestered. Sun Dazhuang seemed to have set his eyes on her. In time, he might really be able to get Bai Luo. At that time, Bai Luo had resolutely chosen to leave with Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was grateful and decided to help her. Her cultivation was too low, so Tang Zheng decided to teach her the heavenly god arts and build a divine bridge. Bai Luo was confused, but after hearing Tang Zheng teach her the heavenly god arts, she immediately realized how extraordinary this ability was. She asked in astonishment, what kind of ability is this? Heavenly god arts. Bai Luo was confused. Clearly, she had never heard of the heavenly god arts at her level. Chapter 1878. Sun Jiugong was in a daze, his expression fluctuating as he muttered to himself, Heavenly God technique, he actually knows about the Heavenly God technique. Who is it? Bai Luo turned pale with fright when she heard the voice outside. Bang! With a sweep of Bai Luo's palm, the door opened, revealing Sun Jiugong to the two of them. Tang Zheng was unperturbed. He had long since noticed Sun Jiugong standing outside. As for him teaching Bai Luo the Heavenly God technique, he did not hide it from him and instead deliberately told him. Now it seemed that Sun Jiugong really did know about the Heavenly God technique. Could it be that he also wanted to cultivate to become a god like the Fengdu Necropolis Lord? So it's you, clan leader Sunday. Bai Luo was a little embarrassed and bowed slightly. Tang Zheng only nodded slightly and did not say a word. Sun Jiugong's face turned red. He was caught eavesdropping and hurriedly explained, I just arrived, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said enigmatically, it's fine, it's not a secret. I didn't mean to hide it from clan leader Sunday. Hearing this, Sun Jiugong let out a sigh of relief, but he couldn't help but be curious and asked, this isn't a secret. Back then, a peerless genius appeared in the god realm, but unfortunately, he fell. Although not many people know about it, there are still people who know about it. I'm sure clan leader Sun is one of them, right? Tang Zheng asked. Sun Jiugong hesitated for a moment, then nodded and admitted, yes, I was fortunate enough to meet him back then, but I didn't receive his true teachings. Later on, the Heavenly God technique was lost. I went through many twists and turns to ask around, but I couldn't find any clues. Where did you get it from? It's natural for clan leader Sun to suspect the authenticity of the Heavenly God technique. As for its origin, I can't say too much. As for its authenticity, hehe, I'll pass it to you and you'll know. Tang Zheng was natural and unrestrained, not intending to hide the Heavenly God technique. This greatly shocked Sun Jiugong. The Heavenly God technique was so important, yet Tang Zheng wanted to pass it to him. This was too generous. Sun Jiugong did not know what to do and said, the art of the Heavenly God is too important, how can it be passed on so easily? Tang Zheng smiled nonchalantly and said, perhaps, that person thought that the Heavenly God arts were too important, so he didn't spread it out in time, causing a bright pearl to be covered in dust. I, Tang Zheng, would never do such a thing. What's more, if no one cultivates it, no matter how powerful the Heavenly God technique is, it's useless. Sun Jiugong was deeply moved as he was convinced by Tang Zheng's words. Bai Luo had never heard of the Heavenly God technique, so she thought it was an ordinary divine ability. Only after hearing their conversation did she realize the value of the Heavenly God technique. Tang Zheng, the Heavenly God technique is so important. Are you really going to teach it to me? Bai Luo asked doubtfully. For cultivators, any kind of supernatural power was extremely precious. Most people would not easily pass it on to outsiders because it was the key to their own victory. However, Tang Zheng did not hide anything at all, which greatly subverted their understanding. Tang Zheng handed over the jade slips he had prepared beforehand to the two, saying, the Heavenly God technique is in these jade slips. The Heavenly God technique is a method to build a divine bridge and reach the deity realm. The two received the jade slips and impatiently immersed themselves in it. They were immediately shocked by the Heavenly God technique's miraculous effects and were petrified on the spot. After a while, the two seemed to have woken up from a dream and looked at Tang Zheng with tears of gratitude. Sun Jiugong's tears flowed freely, saying, hearing the Tao in the morning, dying in the evening can be content. Now that I have the fate to see the Heavenly God technique, I can die without regrets. Tang Zheng smiled, just looking at it isn't enough. You still have to cultivate it. Sun Jiugong's expression dimmed, saying, the Heavenly God technique is indeed miraculous, but cultivating it requires the power of faith. Otherwise, it won't be able to build a divine bridge and raise one's cultivation. Although the divine world is big, the power of faith is unique to the divine race. We don't have any power of faith, so there's no way to cultivate the Heavenly God technique. Sun Jiugong couldn't hide his disappointment. Bai Luo's expression stiffened and her head drooped. Tang Zheng laughed loudly, haha, what's so difficult about the power of faith? With a tap of his finger, Two streams of energy shot out and entered the two's bodies. Everything happened so quickly that Bai Luo didn't even have time to react. Sun Jiugong's thick eyebrows rose, but it was too late for him to resist. He could only watch as the two streams of energy entered his body. If Tang Zheng was an enemy, he would definitely have died on the spot. Sun Jiugong was shocked, wondering just how high Tang Zheng's cultivation had to be able to do this. Bai Luo anxiously asked, "What is this thing?" She discovered that there was an extra stream of energy in her body, but it didn't harm her, so she couldn't help but be curious. "The power of faith." Tang Zheng casually said these 4 words. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo cried out in unison, "Power of faith." Tang Zheng said with a smile, "This power of faith is enough for you to cultivate for a while and raise your cultivation. In the future, when you've used it all up, I'll give you more." The way the two looked at Tang Zheng changed again and again, as if they didn't recognize him. Was power of faith so easy to obtain? Why did Tang Zheng's tone sound like it was easy to obtain? This completely overturned their understanding of the world. How do you have so much power of faith? Sun Jiugong couldn't help but ask. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. You only need to know that you don't need to worry about power of faith and can focus on cultivating the heavenly god arts. Not only can you cultivate the heavenly god arts, but everyone in the Earth Traveler tribe can cultivate the heavenly god arts. Then they all have power of faith. Sun Jiugong blurted out. Tang Zheng nodded. Sun Jiugong felt a little dizzy. The world was changing too quickly. Was power of faith a cabbage? It could be obtained so easily. In this god realm, I am the only one who can provide you with so much power of faith. Tang Zheng added. Sun Jiugong nodded in a daze. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and asked, "Could you be a member of the god race?" God race? Tang Zheng was stunned and burst into laughter. But it was no wonder Sun Jiugong misunderstood. After all, power of faith was exclusive to the god race. If one wasn't a member of the god race, it was impossible to have so much power of faith. And you're not an ordinary member of the god race. You must have an extraordinary position in the god race to have so much power of faith. Sun Jiugong muttered to himself. Then do you think I look like a member of the god race? Tang Zheng asked mischievously. Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Zheng in a daze and shook his head firmly. No, the god race is the enemy of my Earth Traveler tribe. They are arrogant and look down on the Earth Traveler tribe. They don't even bother to talk to us. They would never do something like you. Tang Zheng raised his brows and looked at Sun Jiugong from head to toe. He was very surprised. Sun Jiugong actually dared to say that the Earth Traveler tribe was the god race's enemy. Tang Zheng had been in the divine realm for so long, other than the people in the 9 nether underworlds who dared to say something like this, he had never seen anyone else who dared to say something like this. He couldn't help but ask curiously, is there a grudge between the Earth Traveler tribe and the god race? Sun Jiugong nodded heavily. Of course, this grudge has lasted for countless years. Unfortunately, we are too weak to take revenge. Chapter 1879. Tang Zheng didn't expect the god race to have a grudge with the Earth Traveler race, but this was good news for him. What is the grudge between the god race and the Earth Traveler race? Can Patriarch Sun tell me in detail? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Sun Jiugong looked deeply at Tang Zheng and said, there's no harm in telling you. The Earth Traveler race is one of the earliest races in the god realm. When the world was created, 2 races were born in the god realm, the god race and the Earth Traveler race. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. The Earth Traveler race had such a long history, and they were a race that was born when the god realm was created. Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Zheng and Bai Luo's expressions, and it wasn't hard to guess what they were thinking. He smiled bitterly and said, the god race's cultivation talent is amazing, far surpassing our Earth Traveler race. Over time, the Earth Traveler race was left far behind. The god race was high and mighty, and considered themselves the masters of the god realm. Moreover, they started countless wars with us, and finally forced us to the Hongjun mountain range, a cold and barren place, wanting us to fend for ourselves. How ruthless. We're both races born in the god realm, and we're like brothers. Why would the god race do such a thing? Bai Luo said indignantly. Sun Jiugong said self-deprecatingly, the god race didn't treat us like brothers. They thought that we were born small and short, a disgrace to the god realm, so they always wanted to destroy us. In the end, they found that they couldn't, so they forced us to the Hongjun mountain range, expecting us to die in such a harsh environment. It's a pity that we, the Earth Traveler race, have struggled to survive. Amazing. Tang Zheng praised sincerely. He knew how difficult it was to achieve all this, and how much effort and sacrifice they had to put in. Immediately, he felt deep respect for the Earth Traveler race. Almost no outsiders know about this part of history, and only our Earth Traveler race knows about it. After all, the god race treated us like this, so we naturally wouldn't flatter ourselves and take the initiative to get involved with them, Sun Jiugong said bitterly. The Earth Traveler race is very noble. There's no need to get involved with the god race, because that would be lowering our status, Tang Zheng said. Sun Jiugong was stunned for a moment before he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, well said. We, the Earth Traveler race, are not on the same side as the Celestial race, of course, we don't want to have anything to do with them. However, if the god race listens to you, they will definitely grind your bones to dust and scatter your soul. Tang Zheng chuckled and said, if I don't say that, they'll do the same to me. That's true. After all, you have the heavenly god technique and the power of faith. Sun Jiugong said meaningfully. The enmity between the Earth Traveler race and the god race has lasted for so many years. It's time to put an end to it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Tang Zheng said directly. We didn't have the strength before, but now that we have your heavenly god technique and faith power, we have to end this grudge with the gods. Sun Jiugong's eyes burned with fighting spirit. But who are you? Why do you have the heavenly god's secret art and the power of faith? I can't see through you. You aren't of the god race, so how did you do all this? Sun Jiugong asked doubtfully. He racked his brains but couldn't think of an answer. Tang Zheng hesitated and said, allow me to keep you in suspense for now. In the future, you will naturally find out. He came from the human world. If his identity was exposed, would it spread to the ears of the god race? Now that two gods had come to the human world, how much would the god race's hostility toward the human world increase? He didn't need to think to guess one thing. For the safety of the human world, he had to hide his identity. Sun Jiugong stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes as if he was weighing the pros and cons. In the end, he nodded and said, all right, I believe you. I look forward to the day when I find out the answer. That day will come, Tang Zheng said with certainty. Patriarch Sun, since the enmity between the Earth Traveler race and the god race goes back so long, you must know a lot about the god race, right? Of course. Only by knowing ourselves and our enemy can we survive. Moreover, the one who knows ourselves best is our enemy. We have been the god race's enemy for countless years and have long since seen through them. Sun Jiugong patted his chest and said matter-of-factly. Tang Zheng was waiting for these words. During this period of time, he had been thinking of a way to deal with the god race. Whether it was the plan he and Hades Lord came up with together or him passing the heavenly god art to the Earth Traveler race, these were all part of the plan. However, these were not enough to defeat the god race. The god race's foundation was too deep. As long as they had an endless supply of power of faith, even if they failed, they would have a chance to rise again. He only had one chance to fight the god race. One chance to determine victory and defeat. Moreover, the god race would never be able to rise again. What did the god race rely on to survive? The power of faith. This was the source of their power. Only by cutting off the source of their power of faith could they defeat the god race from their foundation. Tang Zheng had thought of this plan, but he hadn't put it into practice because he lacked crucial information. The appearance of the Earth Traveler race solved this problem. This was a pleasant surprise. Sun Jiugong heard something and asked curiously, could it be that you want to know some information about the god race? Of course, Tang Zheng said with a smile, I want to know which world the god race's power of faith comes from. Which world does the power of faith come from? Sun Jiugong looked at Tang Zheng in astonishment and said, you actually want to know this? Is there a problem? No problem, I'm just curious. What is your goal in wanting to know this? Sun Jiugong asked. To cut off the source of the god race's power of faith. Tang Zheng said calmly, but these words were like a clap of thunder. Bai Luo couldn't help but cry out in shock as she looked at Tang Zheng like he was a monster. Sun Jiugong couldn't hide his shock and asked, "You actually have this idea? I advise you to give up on this idea." Why? Because the Earth Traveler race's ancestor once thought of this method, but unfortunately, it didn't succeed. Sun Jiugong shook his head and said resentfully. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up and he said excitedly, "Great minds think alike. This means that this method is feasible." Sun Jiugong looked helplessly at Tang Zheng and said, "Didn't you hear clearly? The Earth Traveler race didn't succeed." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I don't mean to belittle the Earth Traveler race, but I haven't tried it myself, so I definitely won't be satisfied." Sun Jiugong said, "You won't turn back until you hit the southern wall. You have guts, but I still have to say that this method won't work." Tang Zheng clearly wasn't convinced. "It's precisely because my ancestor once tried this method that I happen to know the answer to your question. The god race's power of faith comes from 9 worlds. Apart from the god realm, there are 8 other worlds, but each world and the god realm have spatial restrictions." Tang Zheng remembered this and said, "There are actually 9 worlds. Apart from the god realm, Fengdu must be one of them. Of course, this is something everyone knows. Fengdu was snatched from the 9 underworlds by the god race. The other 7 worlds are even larger than Fengdu and contribute even more power of faith." Tang Zheng said, "The world I came from is one of them. There are 6 other worlds. Where are they?" Chapter 1880. Tang Zheng looked at the 6 worlds and asked, "Do you know what these worlds are and where they are?" Sun Jiugong smiled bitterly, "Of course I do." "Fine, I'll tell you everything." Obviously, Sun Jiugong didn't think that Tang Zheng could do anything, but he didn't know what to do, so he could only tell him everything. Tang Zheng immediately listened attentively. These worlds are very complicated. Aside from the god realm, there are 2 other worlds, Fengdu, Ghost Realm, Devil Realm, Monster Realm, Phoenix Realm, and Dragon Realm. Tang Zheng's eyes widened in shock. Among the worlds he knew, aside from Sky Beyond and 9 underworlds, they were all worlds where the god race's power of faith came from. Most importantly, there were 2 more worlds, which Tang Zheng didn't expect. Aside from that, what were the Devil Realm, Monster Realm, and Phoenix Realm? He didn't know anything. Clan Leader Sun, can you tell me more about the Human Realm, Devil Realm, Demon Realm, and Phoenix Realm? Tang Zheng asked. "As long as I know, I will tell you everything." Sun Jiugong began to talk non-stop. The so-called 2 worlds, one of them was the world Tang Zheng came from, and the other was similar to his world. Humans were also endless and were the absolute masters of everything. Of course, there were some differences, such as the world structure, cultivation methods, and systems, which were different from Tang Zheng's world. Tang Zheng had already guessed that there were more than one human world in the vast universe, so he wasn't surprised. He just sighed that the humans of the other world were enslaved by the god race and became the source of their power of faith. They were really brothers in the same boat, breathing together and sharing the same fate. Obviously, that world didn't have a genius like Tang Zheng. They didn't recognize their fate and didn't fight for it. In addition, the Devil Realm was the world of the demon god. It wasn't hard to understand their worship of the god race just by hearing the name. The Devil Realm was full of demon gods, as if it was a simulation of the god race. The Monster Realm was also a world of the monster race. There were no humans. Tang Linga was a demon, so she definitely had something in common with the demons of the Demon Realm. The Phoenix Realm was very similar to the Dragon Realm, but the Phoenix race lived in the Phoenix Realm. Like the Dragon race, they were revered as divine beasts by humans and were extremely powerful. That's all I know. I'll tell you everything. As for the specific locations of these worlds, our ancestors have explored them one by one. Sun Jiugong said as he took out an ancient map. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He quickly took the map and unfolded it. Shua. A ray of light rose up from the map and changed unpredictably above everyone's head before finally turning into a cluster of nebulas. There were 9 bright spots in this nebula, shining brightly. Nebula diagram. Bai Luo blurted out. Sun Jiugong nodded. Yes, it is. This is the nebula map that our ancestor painstakingly drew. The 9 bright spots marked on the nebula map are the 9 corresponding worlds, which are the worlds from which the god race's faith power originates. Tang Zheng curiously looked at the nebula map. This was his first time seeing a nebula map, so he couldn't help but be curious. He stared with wide eyes and immersed himself in it, not saying a word. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo saw him immersed in it, so they also held their breaths and quietly looked at him. Sun Jiugong had already looked at the nebula map countless times, but he didn't have any insights. Apart from the locations of the 9 worlds, there was nothing else. However, the same nebula map looked completely different in Tang Zheng's eyes. Wonderful. This is truly wonderful. How come I've never thought of using the nebula to mark the locations of the worlds? Conventional maps are no longer suitable. Only a 3-dimensional map like the nebula map can mark the locations of the worlds. This made him subconsciously think of the heavenly chess. Using the world as the chessboard, how grand it was. However, Tang Zheng now had a deeper level of understanding. My previous thoughts and knowledge were still too limited. Using the world as the chessboard can't be considered truly grand. Using the universe as the chessboard and playing the heavenly chess on this nebula, using the worlds of the stars as chess pieces, only then can the heavenly chess power be maximized. Tang Zheng suddenly laughed. He now knew why the Earth Traveler race's ancestors had failed. They didn't know about the heavenly chess and couldn't use such terrifying power, so they naturally couldn't succeed. However, Tang Zheng was different. He had the heavenly chess and was very proficient in it. As long as he had enough time to study it thoroughly and successfully play the heavenly chess, the result would be completely different. Sun Jiugong and Bai Luo were shocked to see Tang Zheng suddenly laugh. Sun Jiugong nervously asked, Tang Zheng, what's wrong? Tang Zheng came back to his senses and looked at Sun Jiugong with a smile. Sun Jiugong was confused by his gaze. Is there a problem with this nebula map? Tang Zheng shook his head with a smile. There's no problem at all. In fact, it's very important. It's enlightened me and helped me think through many key problems. Sun Jiugong's old face turned red. He had studied the nebula map countless times but had come up empty-handed. However, Tang Zheng was enlightened with a single glance. The difference was too great. What key problems have you thought through? Bai Luo didn't understand and asked curiously. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. You'll know when I've verified it. Bai Luo nodded regretfully. Sun Jiugong came back to his senses and said, the nebula map is a pure waste in my hands. Since you've comprehended it, I'll give it to you. A treasured sword is given to a hero, only then will it not be covered in dust. Tang Zheng said in shock, the nebula map is so precious. The Earth Traveler race's ancestors must have spent a lot of time and effort to successfully draw it. Sun Jiugong waved his hand and said, you're exaggerating. The nebula map is useless in my hands and has even lost its value. If I give it to you, you'll definitely make full use of its value. That way, you won't be wasting the ancestors' efforts. Sun Jiugong's words were sincere. Tang Zheng no longer hesitated and waved his hand, taking the nebula map into his hand and rolling it up. Patriarch Sun, don't worry. I definitely won't let the Earth Traveler race's ancestors' efforts go to waste. Tang Zheng promised firmly. Sun Jiugong nodded with a gratified smile. What are you going to do next? Are you going to these worlds? Sun Jiugong guessed curiously. Tang Zheng generously admitted, yes. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. I'll visit these worlds one by one. Perhaps, only by going deep into these worlds will I be able to think of a perfect way to completely cut off the source of the god race's power of faith. Sun Jiugong didn't think that Tang Zheng would succeed before, but at this moment, he couldn't help but be shaken. Could he really succeed? Chapter 1881. In the following days, Tang Zheng taught the Earth Traveler the unworldly divine art and spread the power of faith, benefiting the Earth Traveler race greatly. What Yumo hadn't expected was that Sun Dazhuang and Bai Luo were the first to establish the divine bridge. Even the Sun Clan leader was a step behind. At the same time, Tang Zheng's prestige was unparalleled. No matter where he went, the Earth Traveler race would treat him with respect and didn't dare slight him in the slightest. Tang Zheng would often stand in a world of ice and snow, gazing at the main peak and speculating about what Yuanying's avatar was doing. In truth, it wasn't difficult for Tang Zheng to guess Yuanying's plan. He was walking the path of the upper echelons. He wanted to gather all the experts in the world and grow stronger step by step until he could contend against the god race. Tang Zheng didn't think this plan would work after some analysis. The god race's strength was unquestionable. A few more Sage Realm experts wouldn't be able to turn the tables and defeat them. Yuanying's avatar was wishful thinking. It was too simple. Of course, with Yuanying's avatar bearing the brunt and becoming the most eye-catching target, Tang Zheng was practically invisible and wouldn't be easily discovered by the god race. Once the Earth Traveler race's cultivation was on the right track, Tang Zheng knew it was time for him to leave. Clan leader Sun looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. He had been racking his brains to figure out Tang Zheng's identity all this time, but in the end, he discovered that everything was in vain. None of his guesses were valid. A feeling of reverence arose spontaneously in his heart. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated gaze and asked, "Are you going to those worlds?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Yes." Now, in the human realm, the dragon realm, and the ghost realm all regarded Tang Zheng as a god spirit. The god race was overtaken by the god race. Sooner or later, the god race would discover this serious situation. This was much more serious than the nascent soul avatar, this uninvited guest. At that time, these three worlds would definitely attract a large army of the god race, not just one. Tang Zheng was racing against time. He had to cut off the god race's power of faith before they moved. Success. Clan leader Sun cupped his hands in greeting. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded before leaving the Hongjun mountain range alone. Bai Luo stayed behind. Amidst the waving of the arms, Tang Zheng stepped on the wind and disappeared into the snow that filled the sky. Tang Zheng had studied the nebula map thoroughly. Not only did he have the coordinates of those few worlds, but he also marked the coordinates of the netherworld and heavens beyond on the nebula map. "I'll make a trip to the human world first and see what's the difference between it and my world." Tang Zheng's mind flickered as he urged the space principals to open a space gate. He stared at the space gate in a daze for a moment before a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. He subconsciously widened his eyes, and one thought after another surged in his mind like a tide. His mind was in a mess as his thoughts drifted. The spatial restriction is the key to isolating the various worlds. Only by comprehending the laws of space can one pass through the various worlds. To the god race, these few worlds are completely open to them because the god race has mastered the laws of space. However, to the natives of these few worlds, they have no way to pass through to the god realm. In fact, they have no way to pass through to the other worlds. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up bit by bit as his thoughts became clearer. Because they haven't comprehended the laws of space, and because their strength is too low, they have no way to jump to the other high-level worlds. The god realm is the highest level of these few worlds. The god race can go from the god realm to the other worlds, but the other worlds have no way to go to the god realm. Unless they are like me and Yuanying's doppelganger, they can cultivate to godhood. The power of faith can pass through the spatial restriction between the various worlds without any obstruction. This is based on the existing laws of space. Once the laws of space change, the power of faith will definitely not be able to smoothly pass from the various worlds to the god realm. In addition, the new laws of space will also prevent the god realm from reaching the other worlds. This can protect these weak worlds. From now on, as long as they haven't comprehended the new laws of space, the experts of the other worlds will not interfere with these worlds. Tang Zheng's eyes became brighter and brighter like the stars. He looked at the spatial gate and laughed. God race, oh god race, you never dreamed that I would come up with this idea. Tang Zheng's intuition told him that this idea was feasible. However, it was not easy to truly change the laws of space. This was a huge project that required a great ability. He could only visit these few worlds and gain a deep understanding of each world. Only then would he be able to change the laws of space. He stepped into the spatial gate in high spirits. The spatial gate closed, and a moment later, he appeared in another world. Tang Zheng stood above the 9 heavens, overlooking the vast land. There were mountains, lakes, and oceans. There were many similarities with Tang Zheng's mortal world. With a thought, he flew over the mountains, lakes, oceans, and bustling streets like a ray of light. Suddenly, he stopped and looked at a majestic mountain peak below. At the peak of this mountain, there was a magnificent temple. The incense was flourishing, and believers were gathered. This was not the main point. The main point was that there was a dense power of faith lingering on the mountain peak. It was difficult to see with the naked eye, but Tang Zheng could see it clearly. This was the power of faith of the god race. Tang Zheng transformed into an ordinary person and landed on the mountain. He looked up and saw 3 familiar words: ordinary balance mountain. He was stunned. He felt as if he had traveled through time and space. Haha, my hometown has an ordinary balance mountain. This place is also an ordinary balance mountain. It's really fate. Tang Zheng walked into the temple with interest. There were no cultivators here. Instead, he saw a few martial artists. Could it be that this world only has martial artists? He shook his head and did not think too much about it. He walked into the main hall. A statue of a god sat at the top of the main hall. It was dignified without being angry. The believers were kneeling at its feet, kowtowing and praying devoutly. Tang Zheng looked at the statue quietly. He could feel the aura of the god race from it. Wisps of power of faith rose from the believers like smoke. They gathered on top of the statue and soared up, passing through the top of the temple and into the 9 heavens, disappearing without a trace. The god race has thousands of incarnations. There must be statues of the god race in those 1,000-year-old temples. If every statue is destroyed, it will be a blow to the god race. Of course, this would not be of much use. On the contrary, it would alert the enemy. Tang Zheng naturally would not do this. He stood out from the crowd of devout believers and attracted a lot of attention. Someone was already walking toward him. Tang Zheng smiled and left the main hall. The other party quickly caught up and seemed to be staring at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was surprised. The other party had sharp eyes. They only met briefly and seemed to have seen through something. Tang Zheng strolled leisurely. He left the temple and came to the back of the mountain. He stood in front of the cliff and looked into the distance. At the foot of the mountain was a city. Bang bang. Chapter 1882. Tang Zheng stood at the edge of the cliff and naturally knew that the other party had caught up. This person was in his 20s and was in the prime of his life. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. There was a bit of scholarly elegance in his heroic appearance, but there was a mysterious aura around him. Ordinary people might not be able to sense it, but it couldn't hide it from Tang Zheng. This person was also looking at Tang Zheng's back like a torch, as if he wanted to see through him. "May I ask who you are?" This person hesitated for a long time before finally asking. Tang Zheng slowly turned around and looked at him calmly. "I'm just a passing traveler." "Passing traveler?" This person revealed a look of suspicion. "I don't think so. You have an aura that I'm familiar with. You're very powerful, so powerful that you make everyone shrink back." "Oh!" Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. This person had good eyesight and actually saw that Tang Zheng was different from others. He praised, "Your cultivation is not weak and your eyesight is not bad." This person couldn't see through Tang Zheng, but Tang Zheng could see through him with a single glance. The cultivation system of this world was completely different. It was a different cultivation method and every realm was completely different from Tang Zheng's world. "You flatter me. I'm still young and still have a long way to go." This person didn't claim credit and instead said humbly, "My name is Yu Zhitian." "May I ask for your name?" "Yu Zhitian." Tang Zheng muttered, "Your name is not ordinary." "My name is very simple, Tang Zheng." "Tang Zheng, I'll remember it." Yu Zhitian said, "As for my name, it's a long story. I saw you in the temple just now and you didn't seem to care about the statue. Could it be that you don't believe in the gods?" Yu Zhitian asked doubtfully. "I don't. Tang Zheng replied honestly. Yu Zhitian's eyelids twitched. If you don't believe in the gods won't protect you when calamities descend. Only a devout believer will be protected by the gods. Don't you understand this principle? Tang Zheng asked with a smile. It seems like you're a very devout believer. No. Yu Zhitian shook his head. I am not a believer, but a divine envoy. Divine envoy? It was Tang Zheng's turn to be surprised. He had never heard of this name before. Precisely, the god's emissary, the temple's guardian. Yu Zhitian said proudly, slightly raising his head. Tang Zheng felt a chill run down his spine. The influence and style of the divine race in the two human worlds were completely different. In Tang Zheng's world, they were more lax, but in this world, there were still divine envoys. This meant that the other party was his enemy. Tang Zheng maintained his composure and said, there should be many divine envoys in this world, right? Yes, we are all from the Shinto religion. God's messengers roam the world, spreading the glory and will of God, making all living beings believe in God and become devout believers of God. Shinto. Tang Zheng keenly noticed these three words. This group of oracles was not a simple group, but a strict organization. They even formed a Shinto sect. Immediately, Tang Zheng developed a strong interest in this Shinto sect. He went straight to the point and asked, where is the Shinto sect? Yu Zhitian said in astonishment, you want to go to the Shinto sect? That's not an ordinary place. Aren't you guys spreading the glory of God? If you can convince me to believe in God, then for you guys, it will definitely be a great merit. Tang Zheng said meaningfully. Yu Zhitian was confused. How come I don't understand what you mean? But spreading the glory of God is the duty of us divine envoys. I see that you are quite fated with God, so it's not impossible. Then what are we waiting for? Yu Zhitian hesitated for a moment, then said, all right, follow me. You have to be careful, there aren't many cultivators left in this world. Instead, there are martial artists running amok. If we were to be discovered by martial artists, it would instead cause unnecessary trouble. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the cultivators of this world were called cultivators. As for the name of martial artists, it had not changed. This point is similar to my world. Martial artists occupy an absolute majority, while cultivators are very few. Tang Zheng thought to himself. Aren't martial artists believers of God? Of course they are. It's just that our cultivation methods are different, so some people have prejudices. In the eyes of ordinary people, cultivators and martial artists are different, but in the eyes of divine envoys, the two are the same. There is no difference. You guys treat everyone equally. That's natural. Yu Zhitian pointed his finger forward, and a flying sword glittering with cold light appeared in front of the cliff. Yu Zhitian called out to Tang Zheng and said, quickly come up, the Shinto sect is very far, we will need to fly for 2 days to reach. Your treasured sword is not bad. Of course, this is a king weapon. Yu Zhitian said with a smile, very satisfied with his magic treasure. King weapon? It seems that the level of magic treasures in this world is different. Tang Zheng noted it down. Even if it was a king weapon, in Tang Zheng's eyes, it was too weak. Quickly come up, we are setting off. Yu Zhitian urged. Tang Zheng jumped on the flying sword and said, you lead the way. Ah! Yu Zhitian did not understand, but did not think too much about it and said, stand firm. Whoosh! The flying sword quickly flew forward, bringing with it a stream of air. The biting cold wind whistled in their ears. Too slow, let's hurry up. Tang Zheng said. Yu Zhitian's face reddened, I only have this speed. Then let me do it. Just as Tang Zheng finished speaking, the flying sword let out a violent sound, as if it was a ray of light flying out. Ah! Yu Zhitian cried out in alarm, swaying for a moment, almost falling off the flying sword. Be careful. Tang Zheng reminded. Yu Zhitian stared blankly at his feet. Was this still his flying sword? How could it be so fast? He turned his head to look at Tang Zheng beside him, his eyes filled with shock. Who was this person? His strength was so terrifying, it was something he had rarely seen in his life. Could it be that his strength is as high as the Tao Masters? Wung, wung, wung. Suddenly, the flying sword trembled violently, as if it could not bear such a fast speed and was about to fall apart. Yu Zhitian's little heart thumped as he shouted, "Stop, stop quickly, my flying swan sword can't take it anymore." "It's fine, it'll be able to take it after raising its grade." "Is it that easy to raise its grade?" Yu Zhitian did not know whether to laugh or cry. This person said it so casually, as if raising its grade was something that could be done with a single sentence. Boom! A burst of flames soared into the sky, enveloping the flying swan sword and interrupting Yu Zhitian's thoughts. He looked at this scene in horror. The flames that appeared out of nowhere were constantly tempering his flying swan sword, but the two of them were standing on it, not affected at all. Yu Zhitian and the flying swan sword were telepathically connected, so he immediately felt that the flying swan sword was undergoing a qualitative change. His refining while flying. Yu Zhitian did not know what words to use to describe his feelings. This kind of divine ability was unheard of, never seen before. Chapter 1883. Immortal Artifact. Immortal Artifact. Yu Zhitian could no longer care about his image as he shouted excitedly at his Feihong sword. The Feihong sword looked completely different from the original Feihong sword. It had changed from a king artifact to an immortal artifact. To Tang Zheng, this was just a small matter, but to Yu Zhitian, it was a great favor. "Thank you, senior." Yu Zhitian was moved to tears, and the way he addressed Tang Zheng had already changed. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. "We should be arriving at the Divine Path sect soon, right?" Yu Zhitian looked down and nodded repeatedly. "We're almost there. Originally, there were only 2 roads, but we actually arrived in half a day. I didn't know the Feihong sword's speed could be so fast. You and I know each other, and it can be considered fate. Naturally, I can't let you lead the way for nothing." Tang Zheng laughed. Yu Zhitian laughed bitterly and said with shame, "I was just leading the way, how could I deserve such a heavy gift?" "Senior, you must be an otherworldly expert, why don't you believe in gods? Also, why are you going to the Divine Path sect?" "I believe in myself. As for why I'm going to the Divine Path sect, maybe I just want to take a look," Tang Zheng said unfathomably. Tang Zheng was not willing to explain in detail, so Yu Zhitian did not pursue the matter. "We're here." After a moment, Yu Zhitian suddenly pointed to a barren land below and said, Tang Zheng wrinkled his brows. Below him was a barren land with few traces of people. How could it be where the Shinto sect was? That's not right. When Tang Zheng circulated his cultivation, his eyes lit up, and he immediately saw some clues. All of this barren land was just a smokescreen. It was just that the smokescreen was extremely brilliant, and even Tang Zheng was unable to see through it in a single glance. Thus, it was even more impossible for others to see through it. This is where the Daoist Gate is located. We have to land and can't fly because a great formation has been set up. Once we enter the formation, we'll be attacked by it. It's very dangerous. Yu Zhitian introduced. Clearly, he was very wary of the great formation. "It's fine," Tang Zheng replied indifferently. The flying swan sword shone brightly and its speed increased sharply. With a sharp sound, it pierced through the air and dived straight down. Yu Zhitian cried out in panic, "Ah, you can't. Boom. The Feihong sword passed through an invisible barrier, and the scene in front of him changed abruptly. It was a scene of green mountains and clear waters, a scene of paradise. Numerous mountain peaks pierced through the clouds, and the mountain peak in the middle was precipitous. It towered into the clouds like a treasured sword, piercing through the heavens. Tang Zheng nodded approvingly. The Shinto sect indeed has some foundation, to actually have such a paradise. Yu Zhitian's face was deathly pale as he muttered incessantly, oh no, we're in big trouble now. Whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, streaks of sword light shot up from the various mountain peaks and attacked Tang Zheng at the same time. Yu Zhitian yelled, the formation has been activated. Hide. Tang Zheng, however, didn't dodge. He directly controlled the flying swan sword and flew toward the highest mountain peak like a hot knife through butter. Thousands of flying swords attacked. Yu Zhitian was dumbfounded and closed his eyes in despair. It was as if he would experience the feeling of thousands of swords piercing his heart in the next second. But after waiting for a while, there was still no movement. He hurriedly opened his eyes and found that all the swords had stopped beside Tang Zheng. The flying swan sword continued forward, and the flying swords actually flew with it as if they were also under Tang Zheng's control. Thousands of swords shot out in unison and flew toward the highest mountain peak, as if they wanted to pierce it full of holes. Yu Zhitian's palms were drenched in cold sweat as he said with trepidation, "Senior, something big will happen." Tang Zheng said calmly, "No matter, I also want to see the Shinto sect's abilities." As they spoke, they had already flown to the mountain peak. Furious roars rang out from the other mountain peaks like thunder. Then, numerous figures shot over like lightning, as if to stop Tang Zheng. But they were too late. Thousands of swords shot out in unison and surged toward a divine temple at the peak of the mountain. Buzz! A sword cry rang out from the divine temple as a dagger-like small sword flew out from the temple to meet the thousands of flying swords. Ding ding dang! The flying swords struck the small sword. The small sword was unscathed, but the flying swords disappeared without a trace. The small sword had completely disappeared, and the small sword had also become a bit bigger. In a flash, thousands of flying swords merged into the small sword, and the small sword also underwent a tremendous change. It could no longer be called a small sword, but a giant sword. The giant sword stood in the air above the divine temple and aimed at Tang Zheng, whistling through the air. The flying swan sword trembled violently, as if it knew that it was no match for this giant sword and was instinctively afraid. "Hidden profound sword." Tang Zheng called out softly. The hidden profound sword flew up, the sacred patterns on the sword emitting a mysterious luster, adding to the hidden profound sword's mysteriousness. Yu Zhitian was instantly attracted by the hidden profound sword. Compared to it, the flying swan sword was too shabby. There's actually such a treasured sword in the world. Which is more powerful, this or the path sword? Yu Zhitian muttered to himself. So this giant sword is called the path sword. Tang Zheng saw the sacred patterns on the path sword. Without a doubt, this was also a sacred weapon. There were 3 sacred patterns on the sword, one more than the hidden profound sword. Whoosh! The path sword tore through the air, and the hidden profound sword was placed in front of Tang Zheng and Yu Zhitian. It had the aura of a sword that could block all swords. Boom! The 2 swords collided. The hidden profound sword was as steady as Mount Tai. The path sword collapsed and turned back into flying swords, while the small sword was in the center. With just one strike, the path sword was at a disadvantage. Yu Zhitian's eyes widened in horror. Although he had already guessed that the hidden profound sword was extraordinary, he did not expect it to be so powerful. With just one move, it had suppressed the path sword. The path sword did not admit defeat. The 10,000 swords gathered and turned back into a giant sword. However, the transformation continued. With a flash of light, the path sword turned into a round ball and spun. "Sword pellet!" Yu Zhitian shouted. Tang Zheng admired it curiously and said, "Sword pellet, interesting." After the path sword turned into a sword pellet, its power seemed to have changed. This meant that the sword pellet's attack power was above this. This has provided me with a new train of thought. I'll have to think about it later. The sword pellet is indeed worth studying. Tang Zheng nodded secretly. He was very interested in this transformation. Tang Zheng stared at the path sword's sword pellet and said casually, "This is still not my hidden profound sword's match." Break. Boom. The hidden profound sword hit the sword pellet. The sword pellet was slippery. The hidden profound sword slid and could not do anything to the sword pellet. Tang Zheng stared in astonishment. Interesting. He did not mind. The hidden profound sword shone brightly and enveloped the sword pellet. The outside could not see the situation clearly. Boom. With another shocking explosion, the sword light dissipated and the sword pellet disappeared. The small sword appeared again, but the 10,000 flying swords around it had cracks. It was a tragic sight. Roar. Chapter 1884. A person flew out of the temple and into the clouds. He stood in front of Tang Zheng and Yu Zhitian, looking at them with a red face. Yu Zhitian, it's you. The other party recognized Yu Zhitian and was furious. Yu Zhitian had long since been stunned by the earth-shattering battle just now. Only now did he come back to his senses and explained, Dao Master, it's not what you think. Tang Zheng looked at him with a smile and said, You're the Dao Master of the Divine Dao sect. The Dao Master sized up Tang Zheng from head to toe, his eyelids twitching. Yes, who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously in my Divine Dao sect? No, I heard that the Divine Dao sect spread the will of God, so I came here to listen to what this so-called will of God is. The Dao Master's brows jumped. You don't believe in God? Tang Zheng nodded. I believe in myself. You're actually a person without faith. Do you know how serious this is? Without faith, you're just duckweed without roots. You won't be able to go far on the path of cultivation. The Dao Master's words flowed like a river. Tang Zheng listened quietly and praised, Your eloquence is indeed excellent. No wonder you can spread God's will and become the Dao Master of the Divine Dao sect. However, it's not that I don't believe in God. I believe in myself. The Dao Master snorted and laughed. You believe in yourself? Ha ha ha, you really dare to say that. Who are you? Can you be compared to God? Why not? Tang Zheng asked back, causing the Dao Master's eyes to widen. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Divine envoys flew over from the other peaks and surrounded Tang Zheng so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. After hearing his rebellious words, all of them looked at him as if he were a monster. Yu Zhitian complained incessantly. He originally wanted the Dao Master to spread God's will to Tang Zheng and turn him into a believer. Who would have thought that Tang Zheng's attack would be so ruthless that it would almost destroy the Dao sword? Furthermore, he would even spout nonsense in front of the Dao Master. However, he was the one who brought him back, so he had to be responsible for Tang Zheng. Seeing that both sides were at loggerheads, he hurriedly interrupted and said, Dao Master, don't misunderstand. Tang Zheng isn't a bad person, he's just very confused. As long as we spread God's will to him, he'll definitely sincerely believe in God. The Dao Master looked at Yu Zhitian with an unkind expression. Yu Zhitian's heart skipped a beat as an enormous pressure pressed down on him, causing him to be unable to breathe. Tang Zheng pointed his finger, and the pressure on Yu Zhitian's body disappeared. He defended, he's a divine envoy of the Shinto sect, so why do you have to make things difficult for him? What's more, his original intention was not bad. He did it for your Shinto sect. The Daoist master snorted and said, I don't need you to tell me what to do when I teach my own people a lesson. I just don't want him to get hurt. Yu Zhitian glanced gratefully at Tang Zheng. The Dao Master clearly did not listen to Tang Zheng as he glared at Yu Zhitian with an unkind gaze. He stared at Tang Zheng like a tiger eyeing its prey and said, You have no God in your heart and are not on the same path as us. Our Shinto sect does not welcome you. The Dao Master was a smart person. Tang Zheng was so powerful that he had no way to make him believe in God, so he directly ordered him to leave. Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to him and gazed at the majestic mountain peak in front of him. There was a large amount of power of faith circling above the temple. This was the power of faith belonging to the divine race. This Shinto sect was the place where the will of the divine race was spread, so the amount of power of faith gathered here was also the greatest. The power of faith began to stir and soared into the 9 heavens bit by bit before disappearing without a trace. There was simply too much power of faith, and it seemed to be endless. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the Dao Master followed the latter's gaze. His pupils constricted as he wondered if Tang Zheng had seen through some clues. The power of faith couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Because the Dao Master was protected by the divine race, he could see the power of faith and naturally knew that the power of faith soared into the 9 heavens above the temple. What are you looking at? The Dao Master asked cautiously. Tang Zheng said with a smile, This place has so much power of faith. You guys are indeed worthy of being divine envoys. You are the most devout believers of the divine race, and the power of faith produced here is much more than the other temples. What? The Dao Master turned pale with fright and screamed. Tang Zheng directly exposed everything, which greatly exceeded the Tao Master's expectations. How do you know about the power of faith? The Tao Master asked in a deep voice, his expression becoming fierce. The others were confused and looked at Tang Zheng and the Tao Master in confusion. Obviously, they didn't know about the existence of the power of faith. When Tang Zheng saw this, he understood and said, I understand. Haha, to you divine envoys, you only know how it is and don't know why it is. Yu Zhitian asked curiously, what do you mean? The Tao Master flew into a rage. Yu Zhitian, why are you asking him? This person is obviously someone with bad intentions, spouting nonsense here to disturb people's hearts. The entire Divine Path sect must not listen to his nonsense. Everyone nodded, believing the Tao Master's words without a doubt. Yu Zhitian was young and full of curiosity. He couldn't help but say, Tao Master, I think it's better to let him speak clearly. The more he argues, the clearer it becomes. The divine race is never afraid of being questioned. The Tao Master said guiltily, what are you arguing about? Are you confused? You brought him back, are you really jackals of the same lair? Yu Zhitian flatly denied, saying with grievance, I'm just trying to find out the truth. Tang Zheng praised with a smile, the child is worth teaching, not blindly following the words of authority and others. Divine envoys, you have wholeheartedly spread the divine race's will, but now it seems that you are all kept in the dark and don't even know the most fundamental problem. In the entire Divine Path sect, only the Tao Master knows, but he deliberately didn't tell you. Haha, his intentions are clear as day. The Tao Master flew into a rage. You dare slander me in public. You're angry because of a guilty conscience. You know very well whether your words are true or false. Since you're hiding it from everyone, then I'll reveal the truth for everyone. Shut up. The Tao Master gripped his sword as if he was about to attack. Tang Zheng glanced at him playfully. Are you sure you want to attack? The Tao Master hesitated. He had already experienced Tang Zheng's strength and knew that he was no match for him. If he acted rashly, he would only be asking for humiliation. Tang Zheng saw through the Tao Master's thoughts and said, the divine race you believe in is actually a divine race that lives in the divine realm, but they are not omnipotent. Believing in them may not bring you any practical benefits, but you have brought practical benefits to the gods, and they have benefited greatly. Believers brought practical benefits to the divine race? This completely overturned their understanding. They used to think that the divine race had blessed them and brought them benefits, but now it was reversed. They had benefited the divine race greatly. How can this be? Yu Zhitian asked blankly. It's the truth. Tang Zheng said firmly, you believe in God, and then you will produce the power of faith. What the God clan needs is the power of faith. This is their source of power. They need the power of faith to cultivate and raise their realm. Chapter 1885. The crowd was in an uproar as they began to discuss amongst themselves. Seeing this, the Tao Master quickly retorted, don't listen to this person's nonsense. Who does he think he is, daring to defile the gods? However, the Tao Master's words did not have much effect. Everyone's eyes were filled with doubt. Tang Zheng struck while the iron was hot, as divine envoys, don't you have the ability to distinguish whether my words are true or false? He is misleading the masses with his lies. If you believe him, the gods will punish you. You should consider it carefully. The Tao Master was helpless as he threatened. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. The Tao Master was at his wits' end. The gods you don't believe in will not protect you. You are spreading the will of the gods for them. This is harming the world. You are all devout and kind people. Are you sure you want to continue doing this? Tang Zheng continued to speak, causing some people to waver. Yu Zhitian said in confusion, you are a human, how can you be so clear about the matters of the gods? I am a human, but I have already cultivated to the realm of the gods. Tang Zheng's words were earth-shattering. When the divine envoys heard this, they were so shocked that they could not speak. The realm of the gods. Ha, ha, ha. The Tao Master laughed wildly and mocked, everyone, listen to him. He actually said that he has cultivated to the realm of the gods. What a joke. Do you still think that what he said is true? He has been spouting nonsense all this time, actually comparing himself to the gods. The gods are aloof and remote, how could they be within reach of you? The Tao Master's words were effective. Many of the divine envoys revealed looks of doubt. In their knowledge, the gods were a height that humans could not reach. For Tang Zheng to suddenly say that he had cultivated to the realm of the gods was simply too unbelievable. Yu Zhitian asked in a daze, can a human really cultivate to the realm of the gods? He did not doubt Tang Zheng and instead looked forward to it. The Tao Master flew into a rage. Yu Zhitian, do you know how disgraceful your words are? You actually dare to listen to his crazy words. Have you also gone crazy? Yu Zhitian looked left and right with a blank expression, as though he couldn't make up his mind. Tang Zheng smiled and said, I'm not crazy, and neither are you. Gods can indeed cultivate to the level of gods, but those gods are always high and mighty. We can surpass them, and no longer be enslaved by them. Crazy, really crazy. Tang Zheng, I don't care where you're from. You're treacherous and have touched my Shinto's bottom line. Originally, I didn't want to lower myself to your level, but you brought this upon yourself. Divine envoys, listen up. This man is spreading lies to deceive the masses and tarnishing the spirits of the gods. Everyone, work together to kill him. The Tao Master's killing intent surged as he gave the order, his voice loud and clear. The Daoist Master was the leader of Shinto, and no one could surpass his control over the divine envoys. Although Tang Zheng's words had shaken the hearts of many divine envoys, after all, there were more divine envoys who obeyed the Daoist Master's orders. As a result, the sounds of battle rang out from all directions as the tide of people surged forward. The divine envoys charged forward with all kinds of magical treasures, their killing intent overflowing into the heavens as they surrounded Tang Zheng. Yu Zhitian was shocked and hurriedly advised, you should leave quickly, or your life will be in danger. Tang Zheng looked at him in surprise and said with a smile, you're smarter than them and have your own judgment. Yu Zhitian stomped his feet anxiously and urged, don't say any more, run for your life. Don't you trust me? Since you trust me, why should I run? Tang Zheng retorted. Yu Zhitian was stunned. Yes, since he trusted him, then he had reached the level of a god. No matter how many divine envoys there were, how could they threaten him? But, Yu Zhitian stammered, not knowing how to answer. You trust me, so of course I have to live up to your trust. Watch carefully. Tang Zheng slowly turned around. Facing the attacks coming from all directions, he was calm and collected, as if these attacks were insignificant. Looking at his back, Yu Zhitian had a feeling that he was no longer a human, but the god he had always believed in. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't run away, the Tao Master couldn't help but smile in relief. To be honest, Tang Zheng had defeated him, but he didn't think that Tang Zheng had reached the level of a god. In his knowledge, there was no way a human could do this. Thus, Tang Zheng definitely wouldn't be able to gain any benefits from his group's attack. As for the negative impact of this matter, it would be eliminated bit by bit later. Tang Zheng stretched out his finger and pointed at the sky. His movements were very slow, causing everyone to be confused. What was the use of this? Could it be that he could block everyone's attacks just by pointing at the sky? This was something that humans couldn't do at all. The treasure was the first to attack Tang Zheng, its murderous intent overflowing. Suddenly, space froze, and the treasure seemed to have lost its power, completely floating in front of Tang Zheng. The divine envoys simultaneously lost their connection with the treasure, and their expressions changed greatly. However, they didn't have time to react. They also found that they couldn't move, and they were reduced to the same result as the treasure. What's going on? One by one, they widened their eyes in horror and tried their best to activate their skills, but they were powerless. This was a power that couldn't be resisted, like the difference between an ant and a tree. The Tao Master was waiting for Tang Zheng to be cut into pieces, but he found that he couldn't move at all, completely frozen in midair. On the mountain peak, everything was still. There was no wind or grass, and it was dead silent. The Tao Master was shocked and realized that something was wrong. He retreated in panic, hoping to get as far away from Tang Zheng as possible. He had just taken a step back when he found that he couldn't move. He was like a puppet, unable to control his body. Even the Dao sword was frozen in front of him, losing its luster. There were only two people left in the world who could still move: Tang Zheng and Yu Zhitian. Yu Zhitian was really stunned and at a loss. All of this seemed like a dream. He moved his neck and found that he could still move, and he felt a sense of relief that he had survived a disaster. "Do you believe me now?" Tang Zheng turned around and looked at Yu Zhitian with a smile. Yu Zhitian opened his mouth wide and nodded blankly. He asked, "Is this the realm of gods?" "Yes." Tang Zheng nodded. He looked around and his gaze swept past everyone. They seemed to have been swept by a sharp light, and there was nowhere to hide. It was as if all their secrets were presented in front of Tang Zheng. "This is the realm of gods. I'm a human, but I've reached the realm of gods. What I can do, you can do too. Humans should be in charge of their own destiny, and not hand everything over to gods. This is the act of a coward." Tang Zheng's words were deafening, deeply stimulating the weak nerves of the divine envoys. Tang Zheng pointed at the Tao Master and said, "Tao Master, you know very well in your heart. Am I wrong?" The Tao Master found that he could speak again. He took a deep breath and said, "The gods will punish you. You will receive divine punishment." Tang Zheng didn't mind and laughed. "Divine punishment? I really want to see it." Chapter 1886. The expressions of the messengers changed as the Tao Master cried out for divine punishment. Yu Zhitian's mouth twitched as he said worriedly, "Tang Zheng, leave quickly." Tang Zheng looked at him in astonishment and asked, "Why? Divine punishment isn't a joke." Yu Zhitian hesitated for a moment before reminding him out of goodwill. "Didn't I tell you that I'm already a god? What's there to fear about a mere divine punishment?" Tang Zheng casually said, looking around, taking in everyone's reaction. He said with interest, "Since you are all so afraid of God's punishment, then I would like to see what this so-called God's punishment is." Everyone looked at him in horror. Some were taking pleasure in his misfortune, while others were curious. Conflicted, Yu Zhitian pushed Tang Zheng and urged, "You really should leave quickly. You won't be able to leave if you're any later." Tang Zheng said with a spurious smile, "Don't be in such a hurry. The show hasn't started yet. How can I leave?" Yu Zhitian's expression froze. Knowing that he couldn't persuade Tang Zheng, he let out a long sigh. The Tao Master was inexplicably excited as he clamored, "Since you don't know life from death, I'll fulfill your wish and let you experience what divine punishment is. I'll let a swindler like you scatter your soul and vanish into thin air." The Tao Master put his palms together and knelt on the ground with a plop, kowtowing toward the sky while muttering an incantation. Tang Zheng said in surprise, "What's going on? He's even kneeling down." Yu Zhitian sighed and shook his head. "He's asking for divine punishment." Tang Zheng came to a sudden realization. "Oh, so divine punishment can be invited. Is he asking for divine punishment?" "Yes. The Tao Master is the head of the divine Tao sect and is connected to the gods. He can invite divine punishment," Yu Zhitian said in a deep voice. Apparently, the messengers of the divine Tao sect were very respectful toward divine punishment. Tang Zheng urged calmly, "Tao Master, don't be anxious. Take your time to invite divine punishment. I'm not in a hurry." The Tao Master shook violently. He was clearly more anxious than Tang Zheng, and the incantation in his mouth was even faster. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of thunder resounded in the sky. A black cloud appeared in the sky at an unknown time, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The divine punishment is about to descend. The divine messenger's expression changed greatly. He shouted and retreated. He tried his best to distance himself from Tang Zheng, afraid that he would be implicated. Yu Zhitian didn't leave. Tang Zheng glanced at him and asked, "Why don't you stay away from me?" Yu Zhitian shook his head with a bitter smile. "I was the one who brought you here, so it's equivalent to me leading you into danger. How can I stay out of this?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're magnanimous and righteous, much more interesting than Daoist Master." Yu Zhitian sighed inwardly. It's already a matter of life and death, Yet you're still in the mood to joke around. Your mentality is too good. Rumble. The sound of thunder grew louder and louder. A bolt of lightning danced in the clouds like an electric serpent rolling in the clouds with a great momentum. Tang Zheng looked up and said in astonishment, "Purple lightning, is this the so-called divine punishment? Divine thunder of the 9 heavens." Yu Zhitian's expression became extremely pale as he said with a trembling voice. Tang Zheng came to a sudden realization and nodded seriously. So this is called the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. This is the so-called divine punishment. Yu Zhitian nodded resentfully. Yes, when a human cultivates to the peak, they will attract a divine tribulation. This is a test from the gods, but the divine punishment is even more powerful than the divine tribulation. This is an existence that no human can contend against. Tang Zheng fell into deep thought. He knew that the human cultivation system of this world was completely different. It turned out that cultivating to the peak would attract a divine tribulation. This difference was especially obvious. The Tao Master's expression became extremely gloomy as he listened to the two's conversation. This was especially true when Tang Zheng didn't put the divine punishment in his eyes. This caused him to burn with anger. If you think the divine punishment is only so, then I'll let you know how powerful it is. The Tao Master stopped chanting and shouted loudly, "Divine punishment, divine thunder of the 9 heavens." Boom. The sound of thunder drowned out the Tao Master's voice as a bolt of purple lightning fell from the sky. The lightning fell at an extremely fast speed, but its speed was even faster. In a flash, the lightning covered the mountain peak as if it wanted to destroy it. The Tao Master's eyes flickered as he pointed at Tang Zheng. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens was guided and flew towards Tang Zheng and Yu Zhitian. Yu Zhitian's face was ashen as his eyes widened. In front of the divine thunder of the 9 heavens, he gave up resisting because all resistance was futile. "I'm really going to die this time." His eardrums vibrated as if they wanted to pierce through his brain. His eyes were stinging as the purple lightning flashed and blinded him. However, he did his best to open his eyes. Even if he was going to die, he had to face it head-on. Tang Zheng glanced at Yu Zhitian and raised the hidden profound sword. He stepped into the air and walked towards the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Under the divine thunder of the 9 heavens, he seemed extremely small and weak, like an ant trying to shake a tree. Many people sighed. This kind of outstanding talent had died just like that. It was really a pity. He could only blame himself for underestimating the strength of the Shinto sect. The true killing weapon of the Shinto sect was the divine punishment. In the world, only the Tao Master could invite the divine punishment. This was also the source of his prestige. The Tao Master's eyes were full of splendor. There was no doubt that Tang Zheng made him feel fear. However, after inviting the divine punishment, his confidence had increased greatly and his fear had disappeared. On the contrary, because of this matter, his prestige had increased again. In the world, no one would dare to challenge his prestige. "Die, quickly die. Haha, I really don't know where a lunatic like you came from. You actually said that you've cultivated to become a god. Do you think I'll be fooled by you? You can fool others, but you definitely can't fool me." The Tao Master was proud and his eyes were full of anticipation. He looked at the thin figure walking towards the divine thunder of the 9 heavens as if he was looking at a dead man. Suddenly, a sword light bloomed from Tang Zheng's hand. The hidden profound sword's power was unleashed to the extreme. The sacred pattern lit up, and the extremely simple sacred pattern contained a mysterious power. The sacred pattern and the sword light merged into one and pierced through the world. Boom! The lightning and the divine thunder of the 9 heavens met. The net of lightning in the sky was split into two. Countless lightning surrounded the hidden profound sword and crackled, continuously attacking the sword. The sacred pattern trembled violently as if it was going to collapse at any time. Tang Zheng's eyes brightened. He felt the power of the divine thunder of the 9 heavens from the hidden profound sword. It was indeed extraordinary. No mortal would be able to survive under the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. The relationship between the Shinto sect and the divine race is very deep. Otherwise, it would not be able to invite the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. This is no longer the power of a human, but the power of the divine race. Moreover, this is not a power that ordinary divine race can use. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens is rare. I can't waste it. This is the best way to refine a magic treasure. Tang Zheng looked at the continuously flashing purple lightning on the hidden profound sword, and had a flash of inspiration as he came up with an excellent idea. The hidden profound sword was a divine weapon with sacred patterns. However, it was far from the limit of a magic treasure. There was still room for improvement. Chapter 1887. The 9 heavens' divine thunder was invincible, and the purple lightning continued to temper the hidden sword. Tang Zheng was in the middle of the electric net, but the hidden sword attracted most of the 9 heavens' divine thunder, and the rest was not enough to hurt Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stared at the hidden sword, and saw the 2 extremely simple divine runes flickering under the tempering of the 9 heavens' divine thunder. Gradually, changes began to appear. The 2 divine runes moved closer to each other, and finally merged into one, becoming a single divine rune. The hidden sword finally made a breakthrough and leveled up. The hidden sword with 1 divine rune was much more powerful than the one with 2 divine runes, which was a qualitative leap. Tang Zheng was overjoyed, and he stared at the hidden sword with burning eyes, and shouted, "Hidden sword, break." The divine rune suddenly lit up like a star. Swoosh! The divine rune flew from the hidden sword, and turned into a ray of sword light that pierced through the sky, and with a whoosh, it slashed at the 9 heavens' divine thunder. Rumble! The 9 heavens' divine thunder seemed to feel threatened, and thunder rumbled. However, in the next second, the sword light pierced through the 9 heavens' divine thunder, splitting the black cloud into 2. As for the 9 heavens' divine thunder in the sky, it disappeared as if it had never been there. The sword light did not diminish, and with a puff, it went straight through the Waymaster's body. The power of the sword light was too strong. The Daoist master only had time to let out a scream. In the next moment, he was turned into dust and disappeared completely from the world. The world fell silent, and there was no sound. All the oracles were like stone men, and they stared blankly at the scene, and their minds had stopped thinking. That was the 9 heavens' divine thunder, which was enough to destroy any existence. However, in front of this person, the 9 heavens' divine thunder was defeated, and even the Waymaster's soul was destroyed. This was beyond their knowledge, and they were at a loss. Tang Zheng withdrew his gaze from the distance, and gently stroked the hidden sword with his finger. The hidden sword vibrated excitedly, and a divine rune flickered, which was very eye-catching. The divine thunder of the 9 heavens is indeed extraordinary. I really want to thank you. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. Without a doubt, the 9 heavens' divine thunder was a technique of the Shun clan. Now that he had the hidden sword with a saintly pattern, he was no longer afraid of the 9 heavens' divine thunder. As if waking up from a dream, Yu Zhitian turned his head with difficulty and looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. His throat moved, but he couldn't say a single word. Tang Zheng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. How do you feel? Yu Zhitian's emotions were complicated. He was both shocked and relieved. In short, there were no words that could describe his current feelings. It'll be fine once you get used to it. Tang Zheng was not surprised and encouraged him. Yu Zhitian nodded with a bitter smile. Adapt? How could he adapt? Not to mention Yu Zhitian's mixed feelings, the other divine envoys regained their senses. Their hearts were filled with anxiety and uneasiness. When they saw Tang Zheng looking at them, they lowered their heads, not knowing what fate awaited them. After all, in front of Tang Zheng, all the divine envoys added together would not be able to withstand a single blow. Do you all want to live? Tang Zheng slowly opened his mouth and asked the question that all the divine envoys were most concerned about. Yes. All the divine envoys nodded at the same time. The so-called loyal subjects of the Shun clan were unable to withstand a single blow and were thrown beyond the 9 heavens. As long as you all want to live, then that's fine. From now on, he will be your Dao master. As long as you respect him as your master, then you can live. Tang Zheng pointed at Yu Zhitian and said, What? Yu Zhitian suddenly raised his head. He was caught off guard as he stared blankly at Tang Zheng and blurted out, "Absolutely not. What right do I have to be a Dao master?" Tang Zheng said indifferently, "If I say you can, then you can. Does anyone object?" The divine envoys suppressed their fluctuating emotions and advised righteously, "Zhitian, we already knew that you were not a fish in a pond and that you would transform into a dragon upon encountering a storm. Today, our judgment has been confirmed. If you don't become a Dao master, then who else can? Yes, you are our Dao master. Greetings, Dao master." One by one, the divine envoys knelt down towards Yu Zhitian and shouted in unison. Yu Zhitian felt as if he was dreaming as he looked at the kneeling divine envoys and then at the smiling Tang Zheng. He was at a loss as to what to do. Tang Zheng laughed loudly as he patted Yu Zhitian's shoulder and said encouragingly, "I believe that in your hands, the Shinto sect will truly flourish and reach a new height." Yu Zhitian sighed as he understood that he could no longer refuse. Since things had already reached this point, then there was no harm in thinking on the bright side. After all, he had never had such a young Dao master before. Moreover, he had Tang Zheng's help. As long as he planned carefully, it was not impossible for him to achieve great things. He believed that Tang Zheng had his own reasons for doing this and that he only needed to wait patiently for what would happen next. "Dao master, take me on a tour of the Shinto sect," Tang Zheng said with a smile. Yu Zhitian nodded and led the way. "Please follow me." As he walked forward, he introduced, "The Shinto sect has a total of 9 peaks, 8 of which surround and protect the main peak. The main peak is where the Dao Master resides while the other divine envoys live on the 8 peaks. Each peak is managed by a mountain lord who listens to the Dao Master." Tang Zheng nodded inwardly as he looked around. Indeed, there were 8 peaks surrounding and protecting the main peak. As for the 8 mountain lords, it was unknown how many of them were still alive. But this was not important. "Let's go to the main peak first." Yu Zhitian led Tang Zheng to the top of the main peak. On top of the main peak stood a temple, which Tang Zheng had already seen before. "What's in the temple?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. "The temple enshrines a heavenly deity." "Heavenly deity?" Tang Zheng said that it must be a certain divine race. Thus, he strode into the temple. As soon as he entered, the aura around him was completely different. There was too much power of faith. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The power of faith in the temple was extremely dense. It was like air, everywhere, far more than the power of faith above the temple. Tang Zheng walked through the power of faith and asked, "Did you know that there is so much power of faith in the temple?" "Today is the first time I've heard of power of faith," Yu Zhitian said bitterly. Tang Zheng nodded with a smile. "The previous Dao master hid too much from you. Does this power of faith really have such a great effect?" Yu Zhitian asked curiously. "Of course, it is extremely important to the divine race. It is the source of their power. Unfortunately, not only did they enslave you, they also deceived you." Tang Zheng shook his head and sighed. "Then, is this power of faith useful to you?" Yu Zhitian asked cautiously. Tang Zheng laughed. "Of course it's useful. Look carefully." Tang Zheng's finger pointed at the void. With a whoosh, a huge vortex appeared in front of him. The power of faith revolved around the vortex and gathered from all directions. The source of the vortex was Tang Zheng's body. The power of faith continuously entered Tang Zheng's body. Yu Zhitian stared blankly at this scene and muttered to himself, "This is power of faith." Roar. Chapter 1888. A furious roar came from the main hall of the Divine Temple. The sound was terrifying, but it was only confined to the Divine Temple. Those outside the Divine Temple could not hear this roar at all. Yu Zhitian's expression changed abruptly as he cried out in surprise, "What is this?" He had been in the Divine Tao sect for many years and never knew that there was actually such a terrifying existence in the main hall. He had only entered the main hall and sincerely kowtowed to the statue before, so he did not discover any other abnormalities. Tang Zheng said with a grin, "Follow me in." Yu Zhitian warned carefully, "Be careful." "No worries." Tang Zheng was full of confidence, seemingly not placing this threat in his eyes. Tang Zheng walked into the main hall leisurely. Whoosh whoosh. A gale rose up from the ground without any warning, blowing Yu Zhitian until he subconsciously narrowed his eyes into slits. Tang Zheng was used to it and said, "You want to stop me with a mere gale? Heh, divine race, do you only have this little bit of means? Divine race." Yu Zhitian's face was ashen. Although he had joined the Divine Tao sect for many years and kowtowed to the divine race every day, he had never seen one with his own eyes. It turned out that there was a true divine race hidden in the main hall of the divine temple. How was this possible? Seeing it with his own eyes, there was already nothing impossible. It could only mean that the original Tao master had hidden many things from them. Tang Zheng walked straight into the gale, and Yu Zhitian hurriedly followed. This gale could not harm Tang Zheng, but it was not a small threat to Yu Zhitian. Of course, he did not dare to take the risk. The gale directly parted a path, as though there was a terrifyingly powerful force forcibly tearing it apart into two. The two walked against the wind and finally entered the main hall. A statue stood tall above the main hall, glaring angrily and incomparably dignified. "Ah!" Yu Zhitian raised his head and looked at the statue in surprise, saying, "How did this statue change? Its face was very calm before, but this time it's actually a bit sinister and terrifying." Tang Zheng understood as he stared at the statue and said, "Just now, it was you who was shouting and yelling, right?" The statue suddenly opened its eyes, and the light in its eyes shot out in all directions. It was breathtaking, but it had no effect on Tang Zheng. "Who are you? You dared to kill the Tao master of my Shinto sect and destroy my Shinto sect." Obviously, the statue had also seen everything, but he did not appear to rescue them. This already explained many things. Tang Zheng asked jokingly, "I've already killed and destroyed them. What can you do about it? You are going against God." The statue roared hysterically. "God?" Tang Zheng chuckled. "Then what do you think I am?" Boom. A surge of energy spread out from Tang Zheng's body, filling the hall. Immediately, the raging astral winds were torn to pieces, dissipating in a short while. This energy was like a mountain, directly pressing down on the statue of the deity. Creak, creak. Suddenly, the statue made a strange noise, as if it was about to shatter. Yu Zhitian was immediately stunned. It turned out that Tang Zheng had been preserving his strength all this time. Even when facing the nine heavens' divine thunder, he did not use his full strength. At this time, the power that burst out made Yu Zhitian not have the slightest thought of resisting. He knew that as long as Tang Zheng displayed this power in front of the Shinto sect's divine emissary, those remaining wishful thinking in their hearts would disappear. The statue's eyes were filled with shock as it looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. It stretched out its trembling arm and pointed at Tang Zheng. You are also of the god race." The power Tang Zheng displayed was no longer the power of a human, but the power of the god race. The statue could not be more familiar and recognized at a glance. "I am not of the god race, I am a human," Tang Zheng retorted. "A human, cultivating to become a god, how is this possible?" The statue had a shocked expression, as if it did not dare to believe it even if it was beaten to death. "The truth is in front of you, can you still deny it? He, you god race guarded to the death, but did you know that a human would succeed one day? This day has come." Tang Zheng's aura was like a rainbow, pressuring the statue until it gasped for breath. "Nonsense, a god is a god, a human can never truly become a god. If you dare to go against the heavens, you will be consigned to eternal damnation and die without a burial place." The statue roared fiercely, as if it was cheering for itself. "Noisy." Tang Zheng rubbed his ears and shook his head. "Since you are so stubborn, then you can accompany your god race and die without a burial place." Tang Zheng's figure flashed and attacked the statue, his huge fist going straight for the statue's chest. The statue lost its head out of fear, shouting loudly as it reacted in a panic. Bang! However, it was still unable to escape. Tang Zheng's fist landed on the statue's chest, causing stone fragments to swirl in the air. There were still traces of blood on it. The statue was suddenly startled and lowered its head to look at the large hole in its chest. It stammered, "You actually dared to injure me, you can really injure me." Tang Zheng casually said, How can you be so stubborn and not believe my words? I am a god. The statue hysterically roared. Stubborn and unrepentant. Tang Jing speechlessly shook his head. With a flash of light, the hidden profound sword appeared in his hand. When the statue saw the hidden profound sword, despair and deep fear appeared in its eyes. Shua. The sword flashed. Whoosh. The statue did not meet the hidden profound sword head-on, instead it was incomparably nimble. Like a crafty rabbit, it directly rushed out of the main hall. Boom. A hole was knocked open in the temple's wall and the statue madly ran, actually wanting to escape. Yu Tian patted his forehead and rubbed his temples, not daring to believe that this was real. The statue was without a doubt a god race, but it was actually beaten by Tang Zheng to the point where it threw away its armor and fled like a stray dog. Where was the dignity of a god? It turned out that a god also knew fear and was also afraid of death. The many divine envoys of the Shinto sect also saw this scene and their eyes were wide open, their jaws almost falling to the ground. What is that? The statue. It seems to be the statue in the main hall. The statue is alive. Why is there an extra hole in its chest? It seems to be running away. This scene had a great impact on them. It simply subverted their worldview. Where do you think you're going? Suddenly, there was an angry shout, like a sudden clap of thunder. A figure chased out of the temple, holding a sword in his hand, majestic and awe-inspiring. Tang Zheng. All of the divine envoys were greatly shaken. It was actually Tang Zheng who was chasing after the statue. This was too shocking. They looked at the statue to the left and looked at Tang Zheng to the right, only to feel that the sky was spinning and the earth was spinning, causing them to feel dizzy. Seeing Tang Zheng chasing after it, the statue was scared to the point where its face turned ashen, but it was so tall that it was like a live target. The sword flashed and directly chased over. The sword light went straight in and was about to cut him in half at the waist. Suddenly, the statue's body flashed and actually shrunk. The statue shook its body and became the size of a normal person. Moreover, it became a living person with flesh and blood. Chapter 1889. The idol transformed into a living person and looked around in panic. Tang Zheng chased after him relentlessly and shouted, "You can't escape. Why don't you stay and answer a few of my questions? I'll give you a quick death." The idol didn't even look back as he said in a trembling voice, "If I don't run, am I supposed to wait for death? Which rock did you pop out from? You're so powerful that you dare to chase after a divine race." The idol felt a headache coming on and was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He was a good idol in the Shinto sect and was worshipped with fireworks. This was a job that many divine races had done before. The other divine races passed this time peacefully. Only he was so unlucky to have encountered such a ruthless character. He wanted to fight the other party head-on, but he wasn't a match for Tang Zheng. He admitted defeat and wanted to run. Tang Zheng also chased after him relentlessly and didn't give him a chance to escape. What would happen to the divine race's face if a divine race was forced to run away? The idol really wanted to cry but had no tears. He felt that he had been wronged. One in front and one behind, they flew in circles around the 9 peaks of the Shinto sect. There were spatial restrictions all around the sect. With pursuers behind the idol, he had no intention of breaking the restrictions and running away. Thus, he could only run for his life in this small world of the Shinto sect. Sword glints tore through the sky and chased after the idol. Occasionally, the sword glints would leave a wound on the idol's body. The idol cried out miserably as if his butt was on fire. There was no longer any trace of the divine race's high and mighty aura. The others were already dumbfounded, their jaws almost falling to the ground. How can a god be so weak? The image of a god in many people's hearts collapsed. Tears flowed out of their eyes as their mentality collapsed. Yu Zhitian came to and wiped the corners of his eyes. His palms were wet. His mentality was similar to that of the entire Shinto sect. Don't look at how Tang Zheng had said 1,000 times that he wasn't in a hurry to see this scene. They truly realized that gods were no longer high and mighty. Gods could also be defeated and even killed. Tang Zheng looked at the subtle reactions of the divine emissaries. How could he not know what they were thinking? He had deliberately chased after the idol and didn't kill it in one blow. Of course, this was also the effect he had expected. Now, it seemed to have worked. The effect was obvious. Then the statue would have completed its mission. "Stop right there," Tang Zheng bellowed. His voice was like thunder, deafening and making many oracles with low cultivation dizzy. He almost fainted. Shua. The hidden mystic sword broke through the air and fell from the sky, as if it had split the space into two. It blocked the front of the statue, forcing him to stop. The statue was stunned. It stared at the sword in a daze. He had already determined that he was not a match for Tang Zheng. Seeing this sword strike, he was even more certain of this. Immediately, he despaired. The hidden profound sword stood in front of him like a natural moat, making him unable to cross it at all. "You are the Divine King?" The statue looked at Tang Zheng in shock and asked. "Divine King?" Tang Zheng was moved. He was clearly in the Divine Emperor realm, but the statue had mistaken him for the Divine King realm. It seemed that his combat power was not weaker than the average Divine King. "Maybe it's because I not only cultivated the new Heaven Book but also the Heavenly God technique. With both, my power is stronger than the average Divine Emperor. That's why he had this misunderstanding." Tang Zheng analyzed secretly. "No matter what, this is a good thing." Tang Zheng smiled, but to the statue, it was like a wolf grandmother. Moreover, Tang Zheng's smile made the statue's last hope vanish. Because Tang Zheng had admitted that he was in the Divine King realm. As a Divine Emperor realm statue, how could he be a match for Tang Zheng? The statue was frightened and asked with trepidation, "What do you want to ask?" "That's more like it. If you insist on not cooperating, you will be the one to suffer in the end." Tang Zheng said with a smile, "Why did you turn into a statue here? What mission do you have?" Tang Zheng already had a guess, but he wanted to verify it through the statue. Every few years, the Divine Realm will choose a divine race to come to each world and turn into a statue to receive incense and worship. This way, they can monitor this world and keep everything under the control of the divine race. Moreover, they can guarantee that the power of faith will be continuously sent to the Divine Realm. The statue said while suppressing his fear, carefully sizing up Tang Zheng. "He's actually a human who cultivated to become a god. He's even more powerful than me, a divine race. How did he do it? He's simply a freak." The statue secretly criticized. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The statue's words coincided with his guess. He continued to ask, "How does the divine realm choose who to be a statue?" Although the statue looked high and mighty, it was actually a coolie. Because it was confined to a temple, it did not have the freedom of the divine race in the divine realm. Therefore, Tang Zheng asked this question. The statue's cheeks turned red and it stammered, not knowing how to answer. "There's hope." Tang Zheng's expression darkened. "You're not going to answer?" The statue looked at Tang Zheng nervously, as if it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It said resentfully, "The divine race's candidates are all people with low cultivation and no power or influence in the divine realm." "Ha ha ha." Tang Zheng laughed loudly and said, as expected of coolies. "The divine race's high officials and dignitaries, those with power and influence, don't need to be turned into statues. Only an unlucky person like you would be like this." The statue's face turned red and it lowered its head in shame. The others seemed to have long since become numb. No matter what shocking words the statue said, they would not have much of an extreme reaction. There were actually so many inside stories among the divine race. Many people had a feeling of sudden realization and stared at the statue without blinking, as if they wanted to know more about the divine race from it. The reverence in the hearts of the divine envoys for the divine race was melting little by little, like ice melting. Tang Zheng looked at the statue's reaction and an idea came to him. He asked with interest, "You should have your own name, right?" The statue said, "Of course I have a name, I am Yin Hai. Is there something special about this name?" The divine race has 4 great surnames. All of the divine race come from these 4 great surnames, Yin, Ji, Sai, and Hui. "I am from the Yin family," Yin Hai replied. "So it is made up of these 4 great surnames, That is unexpected. Your status in the Yin family is low, and you have failed your duty. Do you know what will happen to you when you return? Tang Zheng asked with a half-smile. Yin Hai's face was ashen. He stammered, not knowing how to answer. I will give you a clear path, Tang Zheng said. What path? Yin Hai hurriedly asked. The divine race has always liked to enslave other races. I think it is time for you to have a taste of other races. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he said. Yin Hai thought of a possibility and shouted, You want me to be a slave? Can't I? Tang Zheng asked. Using the divine race as slaves, turning the divine race into slaves. Chapter 1890. 9 Underworlds, Soul Fog Sea. Tang Zheng and Yin Hai flew through the air. Looking at the surging Soul Fog Sea, Yin Hai's pupils shrank as he exclaimed, This is the Soul Fog Sea. Tang Zheng nodded. It seems like the god race is very familiar with the situation of the 9 underworlds. Yin Hai replied, I've heard of some methods to deal with the 9 underworlds when I was in the god world, and one of them was related to the Soul Fog Sea. The Soul Fog Sea will continue to expand, and one day, it will break free from the Hades Lord's shackles. When that time comes, the 9 underworlds will be annihilated. Tang Zheng shivered. This was the same as his and the Hades Lord's judgment. The god race was indeed sinister. Who is it? The 9 underworlds army was stationed at the edge of the Soul Fog Sea. When they heard the commotion, they immediately surrounded them aggressively. It's the god race. A voice shrieked. It was obvious that the person recognized Yin Hai. Yin Hai panicked. There were only 2 of them. How could they be a match for the 9 underworlds army? He instinctively shielded Tang Zheng and shouted, Master, quickly retreat, I will stop them. Seeing Yin Hai's natural action, Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with a hint of approval. He patted Yin Hai's shoulder and comforted him, Don't panic, there is nothing to be afraid of. I am here to find the Hades Lord, they will not make things difficult for us. You are looking for the Hades Lord? Yin Hai looked at him in surprise. Tang Zheng did not answer. His figure flashed and appeared in front of the 9 underworlds army. He said solemnly, Please report to the Hades Lord that Tang Zheng is here to visit. His voice was not loud, but it was very shocking. An invisible aura burst out like a shockwave that spread to the depths of the 9 underworlds army's hearts. Tang Zheng, you are back. 2 exclamations came from the depths of the 9 underworlds army. One tall and one short figure appeared in front of Qin Lai in the blink of an eye. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded, Tall King Yu, Short King Yu, we meet again. These 2 King Yu were in charge of guarding the Soul Fog Sea, so Tang Zheng was naturally familiar with them. It's really you. The 2 ghost kings stared blankly at Tang Zheng, unable to conceal their surprise. I'm back, Tang Zheng said softly, Take me to the Phantasmal Lord. The real battle is about to begin. Decisive battle. The 2 ghost kings looked at each other, and their spirits shook. They knew about Tang Zheng and the Netherlord's plan, but ever since Tang Zheng left, there had been no news. They couldn't help but worry if this plan would work. After all, the 9 Nether had once thought of many countermeasures, but they all failed. He didn't know if he would succeed this time. Who would have thought that the moment Tang Zheng returned, he would actually tell them that the final battle was about to begin? All right, this way please. Let's go to Yudu. King Yu made a prompt decision. King Hai Yu stayed behind in the Sea of Soul Fog while King Short Yu accompanied them to Yudu. Yin Hai was already stunned. He did not expect that the 2 ghost kings would be so respectful to Tang Zheng. One had to know that with his status, King Yu would not take him seriously at all. King Yu was an existence that was not inferior to a Tao divine king. Furthermore, he had a noble status in the 9 Nether, above the billions of life forms in the 9 Nether. However, when Tang Zheng faced King Yu, he was neither servile nor overbearing. This made Yin Hai respect him and admire him endlessly. Yudu. It was still the same, but the minute details did not escape Tang Zheng's sharp eyes. He looked around and said thoughtfully, King Short Yu, there seem to be fewer life forms in the 9 Nether than before. I wonder if it's just my imagination. Hearing this, a pained expression appeared on King Dark Nether's face as he said bitterly, You don't know this, But in order to complete your plan and gather so many new souls, Lord Dark Nether sacrificed many creatures of the Nine Nether. Only then can there be enough new souls. Tang Zheng's heart tightened, and he nodded. Thank you for your hard work. The Nine Nether has sacrificed a lot, and I will remember it in my heart. King Shortyu revealed a bitter smile and said, as long as your plan succeeds, these sacrifices will be worth it. Yin Hai stared with his eyes wide open, and they were filled with suspicion. He kept hearing what they were talking about, and his heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. Just as he was thinking hard, a majestic aura came from Yudu, covering the sky and earth. Yin Hai's heart skipped a beat, and he felt like he couldn't breathe. What's going on? He raised his head in a daze and saw a tall figure gradually rising from Yudu. In the next second, he had already crossed tens of thousands of miles and arrived in front of them. Tang Jing, you are really back. Yudu Master shouted in pleasant surprise. Yudu Master. Tang Jing nodded with a smile. I said I would be back, so I naturally won't go back on my words. Ha ha ha, it's good that you are back. Something huge happened recently, and I was worried about having no one to discuss it with. Since you are back, we can study it together. Yudu Master laughed loudly. His gaze lightly swept past Yin Hai. Yin Hai felt as if there was a dagger at his back and all his secrets were exposed. Yin Hai hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to look at Yudu Master. Yudu Master asked casually, who is this god? My god slave, Tang Zhang replied. God slave. Not only was Yudu Master astonished, but even King of the Netherworld had a look of disbelief. Along the way, it was inconvenient for King of the Netherworld to ask about Yin Hai's identity, so he didn't expect him to be a god slave. Yudu Master clicked his tongue in admiration. You are still the formidable one, daring to think what others don't. You actually took a god as your slave. If the god race knows about this, they will probably fly into a rage and want to tear you into pieces. Tang Zheng shrugged his shoulders and said casually, if I don't do this, I will still be a thorn in the eyes of the god race, so I don't care about this matter. Yudu Master waved his hand. These are all small matters. Now, something huge has happened in the myriad of worlds, and you should have sensed it. What huge matter? The laws of space have changed, didn't you sense it? Yudu Master asked in disbelief. Tang Zheng came to a realization. So Yudu Master was referring to this matter. When Yin Hai heard this, he also raised his head. His expression became extremely interesting as he stared at Tang Zheng. He had witnessed everything and felt it even more deeply than Yudu Master. Tang Zheng smiled. So it's this matter. This is truly an unprecedented feat. I wonder who did it, but it must be a brilliant genius. Yudu Master was not stingy with his praise. Tang Zheng's expression became strange. He rubbed his nose and coughed, saying, actually, he only did something insignificant. Yudu Master's voice suddenly rose as he exclaimed, insignificant. Whether it is me, or the Divine Lord of the Divine Realm, none of us were able to do this, but he was able to do it. You still say that this is an insignificant matter. I have to say that you are still too proud. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, thinking, I can't praise myself, right? If I have the chance to meet this person, I must ask him face to face. How did he do this? There must be a story that no one knows. Yudu Master was filled with emotions and yearned to meet him. Short Dark King sighed. This must be a senior, but I don't know which world he came from or where he is now. If I can meet him, I will have no regrets in life. Immediately, Tang Zheng didn't know what to say. Yin Hai rolled his eyes and said seriously, the laws of space were changed by my master. Chapter 1891. What? Two cries of surprise rang out as two sharp gazes shot towards Yin Hai like arrows. Yin Hai felt a chill run down his spine, but he wasn't afraid because what he said was the truth. He straightened his back and faced the two, calmly saying, this is a witness. Master used his own strength to change the spatial laws of thousands of worlds. Ah! Hades Lord and King of the Netherworld exclaimed again as their gazes fell on Tang Zheng, only to see Tang Zheng calmly looking at them. Is what he said true? Hades Lord asked in a low voice. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. Some time ago, I suddenly had an inspiration and decided to give it a try. I didn't expect to succeed so quickly. Hades, Lord and King of the Netherworld, swallowed their saliva and said with difficulty, "You suddenly had an inspiration and gave it a try." They looked at each other in dismay. Hearing Tang Zheng's tone, it was as if he had really done something insignificant, as if it was just an understatement. Waves of shock rose in their hearts as they couldn't help but recall how they praised Tang Zheng and couldn't help but blush. It turned out that this unprecedented senior was standing right in front of them, but they didn't know. Hades Lord's expression changed as he became agitated. He grabbed Tang Zheng's arm and said, "Tang Zheng, quickly tell me in detail, how did you do it?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "This matter isn't difficult to explain." Hearing Tang Zheng's tireless explanation, Hades Lord and King of the Netherworld perked up their ears, not willing to miss a single detail. Their mood followed Tang Zheng's description, rising and falling. "This is what happened to this body." Tang Zheng finished his explanation and looked at the two, only to see that they were stunned and didn't come back to their senses for a long time. Seeing this, Yin Hai couldn't help but feel proud. From what Hades Lord said, he was willing to pay any price if he could witness this scene with his own eyes. Yin Hai was a witness, so he immediately felt that this was a supreme honor. After a long time, Hades Lord sighed and said, "I always thought that I understood your potential and strength well enough, but now I realize that I still underestimated you. You have potential that none of us have. If it was in the past, I would find it hard to imagine, but now that the truth is in front of me, I can no longer doubt it." Tang Zheng said humbly, "Hades Lord, you're exaggerating. I only did what I could because this way, the God race's source of faith power will be cut off. That way, the God race won't have an inexhaustible supply of faith power, and our chances of victory will be higher." Hades Lord's head. Hades Lord's Lord. Hades Lord, I'm here to ask about the progress of our original plan. Tang Zheng went straight to the point. A smile appeared on Hades Lord's face. "Although there's been no news of you since you left, I've been carrying out our plan to the letter. Ever since you left, the souls of the newly born babies in the God realm have all been modified by us. Now, most of them are already adults and are gradually showing their talents. It's just that the God race has always been high and mighty, and they're not used to lowering their heads to look at the affairs of mortals. So, they haven't noticed this subtle change." Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. "That's for the best." Yin Hai's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. He asked curiously, "Master, what's your plan?" Tang Zheng glanced at him. He didn't mind telling him the truth because Yin Hai had gradually won Tang Zheng's trust. Moreover, Yin Hai's life depended on a single thought from Tang Zheng. "I built a divine bridge in the souls of the newly born babies in the God realm and fused the heavenly God's secret art into their souls." In other words, from the moment they were born, they were cultivating the heavenly God's secret art. This is something that even the God race can't stop. In the end, the human race will become very powerful. I don't need to say more about this, right? Tang Zheng's few words stunned Yin Hai. He was petrified on the spot. He had also heard about the heavenly God's secret art. However, the genius who created it had already died in the hands of the God race. In the end, the whereabouts of the heavenly God's secret art had become a mystery. The human race will become as powerful as the God race, Yin Hai muttered to himself. Tang Zheng nodded. That's right. What the God race can do, the human race can do as well. The heavenly God's secret art is the key to this. Yin Hai finally understood and exclaimed, "This is truly a shocking plan. The God race won't be able to detect it because they view the human race as superior. They don't care about the human race's changes at all." Hades Lord glanced at Yin Hai and said coldly, "The God race has done too much evil. This has caused the heavens to be angry and resentful. The God race's fate has already been decided. As long as I give the order, those new humans who cultivate the heavenly God's secret art will fight for us and fight to the death with the God race. Now that I've changed the spatial laws, the God race won't have an endless supply of faith. That's why I think it's time for the final battle," Tang Zheng said. Hades Lord's face darkened slightly. "However, we still need to plan for the long term. Those new humans aren't enough. We need more experts because the god race has countless experts. Tang Jing naturally thought of his hometown. He had left behind the new Heaven Book, Heaven Stairway, and Heaven Palace. He believed that after so many years, he had nurtured many experts. He just didn't know how strong the god race would be. At that time, they would naturally participate in the battle. It was just that the god race was powerful, so Tang Zheng had to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Otherwise, Tang Zheng would definitely not allow his loved ones to participate in the battle and sacrifice themselves for nothing. Tang Zheng, I'm not sure about the situation of the god race's god race either. That's because the spies I left in god race have been completely wiped out. Therefore, before the battle begins, it's best to understand the situation of the god race's god race. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles, Hade's Lord said seriously. Tang Zheng frowned slightly and asked, "What's your plan, Hade's Lord? Didn't you take in a god slave?" He definitely knows about the god race's god race's god race. Let him tell us about the god race's god race's god race's god race so that we can be fully prepared. Perhaps he can even be our spy in the future to make things easier for us. Hade's Lord's gaze fell on Yin Hai. Yin Hai's heart thumped wildly as he waved his hand and said, "Master, you know that I've left God City for a long time. I don't know the current situation of God City, so I don't dare to speak carelessly in case I affect Master's plan. Then why don't you make a trip back to Celestial City? Wouldn't you be able to find out more about the situation there? It's impossible for others to reach God City. Moreover, only the God race knows where God City is. Therefore, you are the most suitable candidate, aren't you?" Netherlord stared at Yin Hai and asked. Yin Hai looked troubled. He had already betrayed the divine race. If he went back, he would most likely die. Wouldn't that be sending him to his death? He looked at Tang Zheng with trepidation. The decision was in Tang Zheng's hands. If he really made the decision, Yin Hai would have no choice but to return to the Divine City even if he knew that he would die. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,